All right, we are live.
All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday and it's 6 o'clock, y'all know it's time for All Politics are Local. So tonight we're going to have a dynamite show. We want to welcome y'all to the show, and John is going to give y'all the lineup. So welcome.
All right, so it is Friday, November 15th. And the first thing we're going to be talking about is the race for governor, right? Like, I know that a lot of us are still talking about the presidential election. Unfortunately, the presidential election is over. Apparently, some people didn't get the message and didn't know. They were like, they're going to vote tomorrow and next Wednesday. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. But that is over. And the race that's coming up is the governor's race for New Jersey, and we're going to be talking about Baraka for governor at 6 o'clock. And Middy Baraka's campaign, his a campaign manager, is going to be coming in to join us at 6:30. We're going to have Maria Lopez Nunez of the Ironbound Community Corporation talk about her work with the Biden-Harris administration and the environmental work and what the election means to pollution and the effects of climate change on our communities. The Ironbound Community Corporation is well known for doing a lot of environmental justice work, and we appreciate the work that they do and the work that Maria has done over the years. Her insight is incredibly valuable. In a theme tonight, we are also going to continue the conversation on environmental justice at 7 p.m. with environmental justice advocates Kim Gaddy and Henry Rose on what the election means for environmental justice and how to effectively organize in our communities. At 7:45, we have Nedia Morsey and Serges Demefack on Trump's threat to Black and Brown immigrants, how to organize when the three branches of the federal government are all working against you. Yes, they're stealing cats and they're stealing dogs, convincingly won the election and the popular vote. Where do we go from there? And a 30 DJ Rhino and the state of hip hop. Actually, also at 8:20, we're going to have council and others come on and talk about a street dedication, an important street dedication in the city of Newark for Pastor Brian Ali. So that is our lineup for tonight and this evening, and we will take it from there. So hey man, how you doing, brother?
Well, let me also add, Pastor Brian Ali was more than just that. Obviously, he was a member of our show,
Hmm.
right? And along with the disciples, Reverend Louise Roundtree, who is the councilwoman at large, as well as Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, the Minister of Mosque number 25 here in the city of Newark. So our beloved brother Bryant uh, Ali would be here every
Hmm.
fourth Friday, but of course he went home to be with the Lord. So there's going to be a street in his in naming tomorrow for our beloved brother tomorrow that we're going to talk about tomorrow. So stay tuned. We'll give you all of the details for that, and hopefully you all can come out and fellowship with his family and share in community for all of the work that our brother put in. So we'll talk about that a little later on. I'm just mentioning the street naming for tomorrow for our beloved brother, Pastor Brian Ali.
Yeah, just
Brother
found out
Taib.
about it. They just found out. I knew it was happening. I just didn't know the date.
Yeah,
And I'm glad you're lifting it up. I was fussing for a flyer, something because we really should that should have been on blast in my modest estimation.
yeah.
But
I
Hmm.
posted it just now. It's on our Facebook page, so it's up there. So we'll talk about it when Pat and Bashir come through later this evening. I think about 8:20. You said right, John?
8:20, yeah.
Yeah.
oh, that's
So
good
we'll
then.
talk about it then. All right. So, and you might want to just follow up with Mitty. Just text him real quick, John, so to see if he got the text, if he got your link. Um, but John, you said something, man. I don't know. I mean, is that true? People didn't know the election already happened.
Oh man, there have been a lot of talk shows and walking up to people on the street. and asking them questions, and they're getting just wild answers. There's that Google search that went around that apparently was reported by Yahoo. That was the people were Googling, how do I how do I take back my vote? Or how do I
Oh,
change my vote?
oh,
Right, like stuff like that. So
okay.
I put it in that category. It's in the
Okay.
category of uh, it's more
Self-select
comedy
ones.
than anything else, right? Like just talking about how people voted and what people think voting is and us, our civics. But either way, right? Like honestly, I think the election was America voting for what it actually wanted,
Mm.
and I think it
I
wanted what
do
it
too.
got, and we'll see how that goes.
I do
Would not
too.
have been would not have been the way I wanted it to go at all, uh, and it is a scary way to go because when you look at it, his message was, and the dark, xenophobic, we're going to round people up and stop them immigrants from taking our jobs, and we're going to deal with the enemies within.
Yeah.
Like, a little scary, right? But in true fashion, it is what the clearly the majority of white Americans wanted, and in terms of demographics, it is what the majority of Latino males wanted. I don't know what that means for the demographics, but pretty
Means
much everybody else
they were
was
leaning
like,
on
no.
whiteness and leaning on sexism.
You said what?
It means they were leaning on whiteness and they were leaning on sexism.
Yeah, yeah, they were leaning on something. They were leaning on something. They were leaning pretty hard too. And so, what I think that's real interesting because already you see the things that are coming up, like, the price in private prisons, the stock in private prisons has improved, just gone up since that day. And you're like, ooh, okay, private prisons gone up. That means people are looking at private prisons as uh, as a good investment. So I'm like, wow, private prisons are the investment now
And they need
because
and
they
they
guess
and
they
they got to fill them prisons up to get that money that they looking to get to recoup.
and wherever would they find the people to put in those prisons? Zaid, can you help us with that? Because I was confused. I was like, why would private prisons be going up based on Trump winning?
Because they're gonna snatch up black and brown folks, on the assumption, are you a citizen? Where are your papers? We locking your behind up until you can
Yeah.
prove otherwise.
Yeah. That's Zaid is correct. That's the other thing we got to think about that because they definitely gonna go. Them racist ass cops are gonna come for a lot of them Haitian brothers, a lot of them African brothers, right? They coming for
Whoever they think is Haitian,
you.
or you
And they
understand, or from El Salvador or wherever,
right.
or Mexican, right? Because we all look alike to them.
Yeah, yeah,
And they feeling themselves right now,
yeah,
There's a
yeah.
Newark angle to that. I'm gonna save that for the 7:45 segment. There's a Newark angle to that.
Mhm.
Frustratingly, that we're all very concerned about.
Well, and I think and
This real stuff. Yeah.
we'll talk about that at 7:45. But you're right, like in terms of that Newark angle, because uh, and and I think this is going to be something that's going to play out in the governor's race. There's already I read an article by the down a newspaper that is down by the shore that is clearly a very we need to lock them up kind of editorial, which was like, wow, Governor Murphy is going to risk funding for needed programs that we have because of course the Trump administration is going to take away federal funding. So if he doesn't get down with snatching up these undocumented people, then he'll put our funding at risk of tax-paying individuals. And it was, when looking at it, I'm like, okay, so that's how they're spinning it, right? They're going to be like, well, we don't really want to, do what is going to be on all scales just violent and looking like you're going to. Like, is it just me, or did the person who was accused of being a fascist campaign on rounding people up, putting them in detention slash
Mhm.
concentration camps,
Yeah,
and and going door to door, hunting for
yeah,
people to put in those camps. Is it
yeah,
me?
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
No, he did. He campaigned on just that, And
he got the popular vote for the first time, and Republicans got a popular vote in a long time.
He sure did. He didn't have a white ride or none of that.
Right. I mean, it was because the election was legitimate this time. Right?
White folks came out. White folks came out the way white folks are feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an interesting question that I think we should ask ourselves, right? What does that really say to us, right? You know, what does that really say? And particularly, what does that say to Black women who were trying to save democracy when they voted 86%? You know, what does that say?
Right.
Our vote matters when white folks are divided.
Right.
When there is unity within their ranks, is whoever they're uniting around that ultimately still plays out. Sisters should not be upset about anything they did or didn't do. Right? They came out right away and did everything that they could do, given this particular historical moment. I think if anybody needs to be concerned in the self-critical moment, it's the leadership of the Democratic Party, from its management to its top elected delegation from the president on down. I think I think one of the Achilles heel that folks still are not comfortable talking about is the blind eye towards what's happening with the Palestinian people. Right, 66 million folks did not vote. These ain't regular stay-at-home Americans, right? These are folks who were just disgusted and just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. So that's what could you do with six? I can think of a lot of things to do with 66 million people, baby. I'm gonna tell you.
Well, I mean, the question though, right? And the thing that bothers me about that is that you actually don't know who didn't vote and why they didn't vote. Like, I would have preferred people vote for Jill Stein or something, right? Like, I'd have preferred that people vote for Cornel West, but she didn't get hardly any votes, right?
Yeah,
like I'm like, if you told me that Jill Stein got like 5 million votes, I'd be like, that's the issue we need to focus on. That's what we need to do. But when people stay at home, we don't know whether they just weren't interested or we just don't know, right? So when people are like third parties, I think the best thing about third parties is if you really don't think your vote matters like that, vote third party, vote your interest so that people can know. Because right now, there is no poll that showed up that was like that, apparently, right? Like, in terms of polling, that was like people were like people within our communities were voting for Gaza or against Gaza, right? Like, those are activists who are like very much on it, right? And the specific thing, like in the primaries, what I thought was brilliant when they were like, we're going to vote for undecided, right? That undecided movement was brilliant because we could literally see, right, what those votes were. We knew there were 10,000 votes here, 10,000 votes there, right, of people who were committed and would come out and vote. But when people don't vote, if they don't even participate, if they just stay home, we don't really know why. Like, we don't really know yet why all those people stayed home. We knew they weren't reached, but we don't even know who they were. We don't know what race they were. We don't know what their politics was. Like, because if she had tilted to the left, right, like more overtly, she might have lost the middle, and people would have been like, "You just went too far to the left," right?
But
she didn't get the middle.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Well, the middle that we know of.
Let me share this. I'm trying to think of it.
She didn't get the middle we know of, right?
Huh? Yeah.
Naomi
Klein said something that resonated with me some weeks ago. She said, we appreciate that she's running, but she's totally neglecting the base of the Democratic Party. And that is labor, people of color, women, whatnot. She's going after, concerned Republicans, and just taking for granted that women were going to come out because of Roe v. Wade, right?
No, man, I got to push back on that. Her convention was geared toward women. Michelle Obama's speech was all told women. She depended on Roe v. Wade.
Black women were 100% behind her.
Right, but she was appealing directly to white women. She was appealing to women in general, right? Like, and she was appealing to white women. She was appealing to white Republicans. She was appealing directly to black women. Like, you can't say she wasn't appealing to women. Now, she was appealing to women most directly. She was appealing that, like I think that when she was appealing directly to labor, right? When that labor dispute went down, right? Like her and Biden were all about labor. They were like, look, we are labor, we will back you, right? Like so in terms of organized labor, she had organized labor unions going out and campaigning for her. The white workers in the labor unions weren't supporting her, but the unions were. She was trying to get those union votes. So I'm like, I'm like, to some extent, there we can speculate on what she could have done differently, but our speculation, we are literally gonna have to study specifically who didn't vote why
The
and
bottom
get
line, the thing that we ain't got to speculate is how white folks came out or who they came out.
right.
That's
Exactly.
That's clear.
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying, right?
That's
The
clear.
thing that
More than 50% of white women didn't give a damn about Roe v. Wade. They went with their white man.
right, 100%, 100%, right? Like, and so when we're looking, and I agree with you 100%. We absolutely knew where Trump's voters came from. We knew they were coming from. He got 74 million last time, 71 million this time. The message he had was the message they wanted. They came out for it 3 times, right? And he got more votes each time, right? Well, not this time, but I mean, like he's 71 million is pretty solid, right? Obama was 68 million votes. Well, that was a record when he got his votes. My man Trump got 71 million this time, or like over the. He didn't get what he got last time, but it was close. It was still an amazing number of people that came out and voted for the message that he was selling.
Mobilized.
And that's why when it's kind of like when they're talking about like, well, it was about the price of eggs, and I'm like, you have to have a racial analysis, right? Because this was white unity. This was real white unity. Like this was like white people getting together and be like, this is our stuff. We're doing it together. White men, white women. Like in Georgia, she only got 29% of the white vote. 29%. Like, damn. White people are voting as a block, and that should scare the Democratic Party, right? Like when you're talking about getting out the base, absolutely, right? But our base wasn't scared about this coming because we predicted it, right? We did predict that white people would be coming out for Trump. His message was for them. It was predictive. It is a white nationalist message. It was appealing as a white nationalist message. We heard it as a white nationalist message with all the tropes, right? They're the darks for the outsiders that are raping your woman and killing your woman, and they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Like he went over the top with it, right? Like there was no doubt, no doubt. Like to white supremacists who were cheering like when he won, there was no doubt, right? Like they're clear as to who he was, what he stood for, right? The overwhelming number of black people were like, or nah. And the group of people who voted most like black people in this election, Jews. Like, not a coincidence, right? Not a coincidence with a person who's running like a fascist, like, and with all the things that you're talking about in terms of like what is going on with Gaza, what's going on with Israel, right? Like, and how divided and mixed that politics is, and how much of a and how intense that politics is. For black people to be like over 80%, Jews to be like 70 something percent, and everybody else is like, maybe the other people of color were like 60% for Harris, or 50, 54, 58%, like they had lower numbers. But I don't think it's a coincidence when we look and we see how racially stratified this is, and for people to be like, it's the price of eggs. And I'm like, black people buy eggs too. Like black people buy, last time I checked, black people also buy eggs. Last time I checked, right? like the
But
majority
the
of most other
diversity thing
demographics
is so
also got hate.
divisive. You know, and the black people, they want this reparations and whatnot. What about our folks that who lost their jobs in affirmative action to black people? They deserve reparations. That's how
And it's interesting because even when you're dealing with, I was having this conversation earlier with my sister. We're talking to some of we love our family members, and there's some who were Trump supporters, right? And it's almost like the some people I know, right?
Y'all gonna have some holiday talks, huh?
Not really, but but in terms of the other, right, like black Trump supporter I know, like the women I know who are Trump supporters were Trump supporters because they were like, but the babies and abortion, and they were like basically evangelicals, right? Like, and I'm like, that's hate too, right? Because they also have issues with the gay agenda, right? So it's really about who you hate. Like I think that the brilliant thing about hate is that it spreads.
Yeah.
Is that you can find
once it gets sanctioned,
right? And I think that a
if you
hateful
put a
message
religious
has
spin
appeal.
on some sanctioned hate, it's gonna get wild. It gets wild.
Right. And when you talk about Latinos, there's continually a struggle with anti-blackness that goes back to colonialism, right? Henry Louis Gates did this great documentary on Black and Latin America that really talked about Haiti, Dominican Republic, and these aren't just isolated incidents, right? Like in the Dominican Republic, they were harder on immigrants. They made Donald Trump look soft on immigration.
And there have been massacres in the Dominican Republic of black
of
people.
Haitians, right?
Right.
Right. So when we're talking about the ways in which anti-blackness works, and you're like, oh, well, Latinos, that means they can't be white nationalists, right? I was like, no, like I think hate spread. We just I think we just have to acknowledge, right? I think we first need to fully acknowledge that he ran a campaign for people's hearts, and it was the hate in their hearts. And I think, and I don't know how to look at the message.
No, I will bring it back to hip hop, the hate and fear.
Mm-hmm.
What public enemy say? Fear the black planet, baby.
Right. And but what I'm saying is, I think that like levels of the like it appeals, right, to people who have hate in their heart, right? Like the people I know who are Trump supporters have some levels of hate of somebody, right? They got some levels to which there's some people who Trump hates, who they hate too. I think that's even true of people who are on our show, right? Like they hate white liberals and way they function, right? Like, and there's this interest. I think that's true of the religious right, right? Like there are people who they hate, and Trump appeals to that, right? I think that he found that, and I think when you talk about Democratic Party and democratic organizing, it is much more difficult to navigate around that. And it's much more difficult to navigate around that, especially when you can't even talk about it.
But John, let me see if I can I think I think we need to really have a conversation that is really black and white, right? Because we didn't draw the line in the sand. I think that they did, right? And because it would seem to me that what I saw was black women were trying to save democracy as always, right? And then it also looked to me like, when they were trying to put the blame early on black men, that we weren't going to support Kamala Harris, and we weren't going to support our sisters. And so now what we see is it is very racial. It is very black. So, me and Bashir was having this conversation, and of course, what it begins to look like, right? It begins to look a lot like white power to me.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And
this is a backlash from a black man getting elected, but now they're gonna bring up a black woman too. We got to deal with a black woman too. Oh hell no!
Exactly.
Right.
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 And so that's what I'm saying. I think that in the black community, we need to really have the conversation, because remember, the only time that white people, say, "Oh, let's have this conversation," is when there's some sort of racial,
Burning the goddamn country down.
yeah, you
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm saying now, we've got to really begin to have a conversation, because when you think about what Melanie Campbell said, who is the leader of the Black Women's Roundtable, she said that that um that she really believed that white women were with them. I mean, she said
Mm.
that. She said that
I
she
think,
said
I
Wow.
think,
she believed
I
that
think most in the Democratic Party believe
yeah, she said she
that.
felt
The
like
party believes that.
she said the majority of the black women organizations that are part of the Black Women's Roundtable felt like they were betrayed. Right? There's an article in the New York Times that she gave an interview to, and I saw her on MSNBC, and she was brokenhearted by that, because she said we had white women for Kamala, we had white dudes for Kamala, right? And she said, but when they went into the polling booth and pulled that curtain, they did something totally different.
Mm.
Right? And so,
Well,
and
I
so,
think that there's.
and so,
Uh,
I'm just simply saying, John, what we should be able to do in the black community, right? And I'm not saying this involve white people, because me and Zaid say this all the time, a black united front. And I think that's what Trump is expecting, right? Trump is saying, listen, all that crazy stuff I said, and even what I said about reproductive rights, when it come to women and all of that, what did you guys see? Right? You guys at the end saw that what they care about is their own interest, John.
mhm.
Right? Period.
And here's the thing, though. I think.
And the question we would ask, though, John, is that racial?
Well, two things. First, one, clearly it is, right? But secondly, I do think that there was a difference between educated white women and uneducated white women, single white women and married white women. So
Yeah,
there's
sure.
still division, right? Like,
Okay.
but that like there's still division, but it wasn't as much as we thought, apparently, right? Because Harris won the majority of educated women, but it was like the majority, not over. It wasn't like slam dunk, like you all of them, right? She won. So even with the demographic of white women she did win, it wasn't by large enough margins. And I think that they were assuming that she would get all the educated white women,
Yeah,
that she
John. Let
would
me,
get.
let me John. Let me just interject. Don't you recall that was the same issue with Hillary?
Yep.
Right? Remember,
Yep.
here's the other thing, and I meant to reach out to Derek Johnson this week, because he said this, on the on Morning Joe, and they cut him off. And he was saying that when they sent him down to Atlanta, right? He said when he got, this is Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP. He said when he got down there, John, he said that he met up with a group of, to do door knocking and all that stuff. He said what he met up with was, he said a group of young consultants, right, who were being highly paid, and they were trying to tell him where to go. And he said where they were going was to educated black women, knocking on doors, trying to convince them, John, that to vote for. And he said that they seemed sympathetic, but he said you could almost tell that they were not going to support for the black women. So,
Oh,
so,
okay,
so,
true.
so and that's what happened with if you remember, one of the things Tamika Mallory told us is that, when she said that she tried to tell the consultants who were in Brooklyn with Hillary that they were not spending enough money in the black community, nor were they spending money on ads in black newspapers or on black media, right?
That's right.
And so again, this
That's
time, they focused on white educated women, as you're talking about now, right? They went again in that area. And remember, they did the same thing with Stacey Abrams, right? Where they said to Stacey, they said that black men weren't going to support her. And now Stacey comes out, even now, when she was campaigning for Kamala, she said that was a lie. She said black
Right.
men did support her. right?
And in higher rates, right? Like 83% of black men supported her in Georgia, right?
Yeah. And
And
so
and, and the wild thing about that is
but
for
that's
all the
that is the
division,
question I'm talking about. Yeah, go ahead. We all been
right?
saying that.
But for all the division, right? They're like black men, black women, we all divided, we fighting each other. And when you see online, right, like all the algorithms, and you see all these black men talking about black women and black women talking about black men and all that stuff, we are like the most politically aligned of any demographic group.
Yeah.
And
Like
always
we
been the
are
most.
far more politically
Once
aligned.
Negroes became Democrats, they became the most loyal Democrats.
And but I think that's for a reason. I think the reason why we kind of stayed here is because it didn't seem like we were welcome in other places, right? It didn't seem like that welcoming thing was here. Now I know we're going to get back into this in each of the different segments that we have, but we have our first guest on. We are very honored to have her back on our show. Um, one of the hardest working environmental activists that either of us know, does a lot of incredible work. Uh, Zaid, you can do that introduction.
You were doing pretty good.
she, she is
I
with
just
me.
missed. I just missed the hell out of her. You know,
Okay,
not only
she is
is she
with me.
trying to shake up the world and save Mother Earth, but she just became a mommy too. You know, so she can't.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out when the child got time to breathe. You know, but when
Oh, just incredible.
she breathes fire. Fire to save Mother Earth and the fire to save all we people, you know. So I'm just glad to have her back. Glad that I have not seen her since she has become a mom. Congratulations, mom. Right? I'm
Congratulations.
extremely happy for you. You know, I'll love on you all night if we ain't careful.
Yeah, y'all too much. Thank y'all. Great to be
Right?
with y'all.
But the real deal is we all got to get ourselves together to bang like we ain't had to bang in a minute.
I
Right.
know. I was like, what a time to be out of the game right now for a second. But
But
we're here together.
and I just wanted to add to the biography. Not only has she been a stalwart for the Ironbound Community Corporation, but that does a lot of environmental work around just the environmental justice, the poisoning of our community, the different types of industries that people try to put within our communities that she pushes against. She's also was on the the Biden administration's task force or commission uh, on climate change and environmental justice. So, welcome here. We are glad and honored to have you here again for this conversation.
Good, great to be with y'all. It's an important time, right, for us to dig in and think about what this election did to our future right now, real quick.
Now, you were very adamant in support of the Biden-Harris administration, and just for context, many people thought that Biden would be to the right, right? He would be a conservative. But it seems like the environmental activists, a lot of people who did work on the ground, really did a lot of very progressive work on the background, really liked the Biden administration. Was the Biden administration far more progressive than advertised? And like what is that relationship? What was your relationship with them
Yeah,
and especially within progressive circles?
I think that's a great point. He wasn't progressive. Let me be clear. It wasn't progressive. What he was doing, he was really handing out money, right? Like I think a lot of people are like, oh, Trump gave me $1,200, but what's $1,200? It's nothing, right? It's like a paycheck in a month, and you never think about it again. What the Biden Harris administration was doing is handing out billions of dollars to communities. Now, unfortunately, folks didn't have a chance to feel that because the money is still rolling out. Like our city, got a couple $1 million just to plant trees. That will have an impact on our city to have millions of dollars in order to be able to bring up the tree canopy. People don't understand, but when they could breathe a little bit easier, it'll be because of of the work done under this administration. They gave billions of dollars to clean up toxic sites, especially in the South. The South had been ignored in terms of environmental justice for decades, and they actually went down there and started rolling back a lot of that toxicity that was down there. So it's things you can't immediately see and feel, but I think that's something, it's all our work to do about educating the public of how long political change takes, right? Because like Trump was able to take a lot of credit for stuff that Obama did. He put it into place, and then the economy is roaring under Trump, and it looks like Trump did it. And same, Trump messed up a lot of things, and then we get into Biden, and they think that Biden caused inflation, right? But it was actually those tariffs that had been put in place under President Trump that then has an impact under a Biden administration. And right now, it's a historic investment that was made under the IRA, and 40% of it had to go to communities of color. I want y'all to think about that. We've never had, even though we're roughly about 40% of the population, we've never had 40% of the resources of the federal government. And for me, I thought that was worth fighting for, to try to get another 4 years of that. It was ultimately about getting money down to our community so that when we're talking about, solar panels and getting people in that green revolution, it doesn't leave out Black and brown people. Because we know like the New Deal, it left out Black and brown folks, right? So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't replicated with the future that we're obviously heading into, whether there's a Trump or not. Like he still has Elon Musk by his side who sells electric cars. It's a big contradiction we're seeing right now.
Right, like as in Trump doesn't believe that climate change is real, yet Elon Musk's entire business is based around dealing with climate change. And what he's in charge of
Always
is trying to find alternative energy to deal with climate change, right? So, I mean, it's a hustle. It is what it is. But where is that? Is that our fault in terms of our community to not that in that a lot of Democrats stayed home. A lot of people who voted for Biden stayed home, right? And what you're telling me, and what most people don't know, are the billions of dollars that were funded through our community to do the things that activists and people fighting on the ground were like, we need to do this, right? And specifically, you're talking about environmental stuff. You like 40% of the federal dollars had to be spent on communities of color, and
unprecedented.
is it that the Democratic Party, like there's a lot of hand wringing, right? The Democratic Party didn't do this, they didn't do that, they were just, but is it really just do you think that it is a communication thing? Like a lot of the
Certainly
things
a
the Democrats did?
communication thing. I mean, look, they still, at the end of the day, the Democrats still pay white people, right? Like they pay white consultants to try to get messages to our folks, and they don't know our people.
You
Like,
just
so
talked about it.
I'm not gonna let them off the hook. Like the Democrats are kind of like, as much as I could be behind them, and I will, because I'm not lesser of two evils. I'm like, who can I get more stuff done with, right? Like, because I know for a lot of folks in our city, they feel like no matter who's in charge, my life isn't different. But it does become different down the line, right? Like things can get worse for us down the line, or like that program was called Justice 40. Obviously it came from 40 acres and a mule, right? Like it was trying to say the government owes Black and brown communities. They've never paid them back. Did you ever hear about Justice 40 on your show? Did any of our local Democrats come on here talking about Justice 40? There's money out there for us. I don't think that they do a good job, even in their own rank, of getting that down. And that's something that I kept telling the federal government, right? Like I kept telling Biden's advisors, like, yo, you're not telling local officials about Justice 40. Like I had to tell our own city, like, hey, what are you doing for Justice 40? And they were happy to get like $7 million, right? And I'm like, no, that's like the small money. There's, a $500 million grant. And right now there's actually a thing called Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It's like a big bank for all these green projects. It has $27 billion in there. And 40% of that has to go to benefit communities of color, right? And now that's something Trump will probably roll back. But if no one on the street heard about it, that's not our fault. That's the Democrats' fault. They don't understand how to market their own product, and we can't fix that. We could try.
But I think this is part of the reason why this conversation is so important, right? Because I remember you were like, if Harris gets in, we can do a lot of good. Right?
Yeah.
What are some of the other programs that existed in the Biden administration, like Justice 40? What can you describe some of the other stuff that you're like, hey, we need to know more about this?
Absolutely. There was a community change grant, which I am sure, spoiler alert, some folks in Newark will get it. Community change grant let community-based organizations, which I need you to understand, the federal government doesn't give grants to community-based organizations. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how nonprofits work. It allowed them to apply for up to $20 million as pilot, like a little bit of seed money, so that they could maybe start, open up their own electric charging station, or so that in the case of a disaster, like with Ironbound, we applied so that we could buy these batteries that you can move around, right? Because at the end of the day, with climate change, you're not going to know where the disaster is going to hit, and we're fighting this power plant down neck that they're trying to build for emergencies for themselves, right? But what if we had batteries that, if the senior citizen towers go offline, we could just bring the batteries to them. Or if the rec center needs them, we bring them the batteries, and the batteries are charged on solar panels. And what if the community owns that instead of PSE&G, right?
Wow.
Well, we applied for $20 million. We'll see if we get it. We still don't know. But if we do, that would be in of itself, when we talk about self-determination, community ownership, it brings a lot of those things one step closer, and it makes those things real in our community. So people can like go see it, touch it, and know that it's theirs. It doesn't belong to, a multimillionaire, and it's not PSE&G, So those are some examples of projects that were out there. That was called the Community Change Grant. Like people applied to like build new schools or change parks that had been contaminated. And it was like really small organizations applying and having big dreams. So I wanted to see that continue. Yeah. We didn't hear about it, but it was happening in the background. It's just, communication takes a while. So we need to kind of help our folks know where to plug in. I think y'all do a great job at that, bringing a diversity of issues to your show.
Okay, and it's really interesting because like for all of the hand wringing that's going to go on in all of the major press that you're talking about, none of them say what you said.
No, they're like blame black men, blame Latino men. Like first off, no one's gonna love you unless you give them a reason to. And I feel like the Democrats, they're not that great at that, right? Like even I've heard some folks being like, oh, they were too progressive, which I did think Harris was in a tough spot. Like she's too progressive, she's not progressive enough. And I think we need to do a general education of our folks of like, a politician's a politician. Like they're going to do what you make them do, right? And so if you're not organized as a body making clear demands, then your politicians are going to be wishy-washy, right? Like we need to put our foot on their neck. And I was hoping to do that with Harris. It was going to be like historic, but I was going to keep organizing no matter what,
Right.
Sad. Now we have to organize in defense of our communities and be more protective. But I want to be clear. We have work to do. We can't lose again in 4 years because we're just looking at Trump and not building within our own ranks during these 4 years, within these 2 years,
And what does that look like, right? Like when it comes to the programs that were here, right? Like it seems like there was a model that could have been used further, right? It's almost like, dare I make a comparison to Reconstruction, but when you're talking about,
well, that's what it was, right? Let's just be real. It was right after Trump.
Right. And so that there's some level of like actual billions of dollars from the infrastructure bill to the climate change bill that you're talking about that put billions of dollars into investment in communities that was designed to go in our communities, that was designed to be bottom up, right? That's really innovative thinking in terms of like understanding that change is going to happen at a community level. So that's where the money needs to go, at that community level, right? Is there a way to build from that? Like what is your advice on going from here to 2 years from now to 4 years from now? Because it seems like the power of the federal government that people don't necessarily get is its power to collect taxes and its power to distribute tax money. And that money can go to billionaires,
bomb the hell out of people.
All of the things they do. They can go to the defense budget. They can go a lot of different places. But it seems like the struggle is to get the money, like it's all about money.
It's all
to
about
get the money that's raised from our tax dollars to go into our communities. What type of organizing is necessary to get people to recognize that your communities actually were being helped and you stayed home.
You stayed home. I mean, and people stayed home for, we just saw Josie, right, say the thing about genocide. Like there was a lot of different reasons people stayed home. Um, I it is tough, right? Because I think on one hand, there's been a cynicism about the government that keeps us from participating in the government. And it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like we stay out of it, we stay home, and then we have no political power because we don't vote anyway. I mean, the amount of times I've heard people in DC talk about our communities, like, well, what's the point? They're gonna hate us anyway, right? Like it's this self-fulfilling cynicism that I actually, an example for me that is really true in Ironbound is during the census. It's so hard to get our folks to fill out the census. Yeah. And that's because they're like, oh no, the man's going to watch me. And then these past few years, we really tried with our organizers to be like, yo, this, if you don't get counted in the census, we're going to get less money for public schools. And they didn't know that, right? Like obviously basic education fails us tremendously. So they don't know that if you fill out the census, then, we can see how many people are in this neighborhood. And there's a lot of us in the Ironbound that don't get counted. I mean, obviously they're undocumented, they're afraid, but they need to get counted so that we can get the right portion for our public schools, for our roads, for our infrastructure, yeah. And so, I think that also happens with voting. Like voting, I'm obviously amongst organizers, we all know, voting's just the one thing. Like I'm never going to tell someone you better get out and vote. Like I want you to get out and vote, I hope so, but I'd rather you join me at a city council meeting or a zoning board meeting. That's more to me direct contact democracy. And I bet you that if you come to a city council meeting, you're going to want to vote because you're going to see that sometimes the people in charge are dumb, you hear them talking, they don't even know what they're talking about. And so hopefully you would want to actually find candidates that appeal to you and you could start pressuring them to take on the right policy positions. I also think a lot of our folks are obsessed with the president, right? Like who the president is everything. And unfortunately, I think the right has done a great organizing job because they didn't just win the presidency, they won the House and the Senate, things that we don't often talk about. I think at the local level, like who is actually our representatives at all these different levels, so I think that's the work that we've been doing at Ironbound, just trying to educate people about how the government even works and how you need to participate in order to get change to happen. It's not going to happen with you hanging out on your couch, but my starting point is not participate by voting, it's participate by testifying, by talking directly to your elected officials.
And then from within your ranks, encouraging folks, within our ranks, within our community, look, you think you ain't got nobody to vote for? Let's get yourself straight. We'll support you.
Yeah.
Corey Bush came out of Ferguson.
Exactly.
And we got some folks.
And she took a hell to defeat, right? They had to throw in $100 million to take her down.
Yes.
Which that's a bragging right. They invested $100 million taking me down.
Raise a thing.
$100 million? Wow.
$100 million.
AIPAC is the underside or the elephant in the room in terms of how money influenced this election and how that also hurt us.
Hey, how about this? Let's get deeper on this, right? Do our folks donate? Right? I'm maybe too much of a pragmatist like the mayor, but I'm like, yo, you want to yell at a politician. Yes, I get it. I want them to be who I wish they were, but I'm not under any illusions that a politician cares about me. They don't know. I feel like I'm a visible person. I've never had nice words until last night. They did say some nice words about me. But other than that, people don't have nice things to say about me. And it's not personal, right? Like politicians get wined and dined by rich people. They get donations from them. And then sometimes on our side, we just have spitting in their face and yelling at them about how shitty they are. I'm always like, of course, there's the morality of it, but I think our folks need to be encouraged to engage more with politicians because they don't see us as human beings. And I think there is something like spiritual about that we dehumanize them, and it kind of gets them off the hook to dehumanize all of us. We need to be calling up every single elected official. When's the last time you try to have a conversation with them? So I think we definitely need to do that. Or the folks that are talking to them are going to keep having their ear. And we know that older, more conservative white folks, they talk a lot more with the political establishment than we do. We tend to stay on the outside protesting. And I just want to say, I know it's not going to be popular, but I think this is a moment of reflection also for our movements, right? Even though we didn't support Harris, like excited about her, but she was definitely the enemy we would choose if we could choose one. I think Trump winning says a lot about how we're also disconnected from a lot of people in this country.
Can you break that down? When you say that Trump winning means that we're disconnected from a lot of people in this country, what does that mean?
Like, we always talk about this with Martin Luther King, right? When he started moving towards a class consciousness and the impact that could have had. And I think in our movement, we've moved a lot away from the class consciousness and solidarity. And we have alienated a lot of working class people. I mean, sometimes I listen to my colleagues and I'm like, yo, you're boring because you're talking about the issue in a technical way that, we've been taught to talk about it because we have to talk to elected officials or to regulators. But then we try to talk that same way to the average person. And I'm like, yo, I didn't have no fancy education to do the work I do. I'm a regular ass person, right? And so I want to be talked to and I want to talk like a regular ass person, not try to gain a whole vocabulary when really we're trying to say, yo, we need money for everybody. We need to pay people's health care. We need rent control. Why doesn't New Jersey have statewide rent control? Because we have it in the city of Newark, and it's because of organizers in the city of Newark. Everything we have is because of organizers. But there's basic shit that we just haven't been able to win. And if you haven't been able to win, you have to reflect, like, maybe your communication's not good. Because the Democratic Party is not listening to you, and regular ass people aren't listening to you. There's just like, these echo chambers that we fall into where we think everyone cares about what we care about.
So that's wild, like, because you're like, that you kind of hurt some feelings there. You're like, nobody listens to you, right?
Democratic Party don't listen to you. Are we boring? Like some of our rallies, they're not that wildly attended in comparison to the population of the city. Like, I think those are moments for us to be like, and I say that to my organizers all the time. Don't be having an event that has cuatro gatos. That means 4 cats. It's the same 4 community members at all your events. Maybe your message isn't resonating, and maybe no one is buying what you're selling. And then you think the Democrats are going to buy that because they need votes. And so they're going to go, and they think the Republicans have votes for them. So we got to show them that our people have votes for them. And I'm not sure because, again, I'm going to hurt feelings, but when I think about the amount of numbers we had, even on the more progressive issues, we can't show that we turn out a base, that we have, that we command the votes of 1 million people. A lot of us don't even keep like phone lists, so I know I'm talking mad shit. I'm going to get heat for this later because it's amongst our own people, but I want our movements to be stronger. And I don't think we have a lot of dissent between our movements, It's only a dissent. The only disagreements about who has the more like radical position, but not who has the most people behind them. So I want to see turnout in these next 2 and 4 years from our movements be enormous. Like they were saying, we're going to be too big to fail. And in a lot of ways, I guess they were. But the numbers, let's be clear too. Harris only lost by 2 percentage points. Biden beat Trump by 4.5 last time, right? Like that's not a big swing. The woman had, 90 days, 100 days to pull off miracles. Like this country always wants Black women to pull out a miracle. Like that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Almost, but not quite. He had a billionaire campaigning for him. Elon Musk was saying like, I'm gonna give people $1 million a day. Like, come on, that's sexy. And that, whether we like it or not, moves the average person, not what's right and wrong, and the morality lectures. Like
now, do you think that the right and wrong, right? Like, do you think that we were talking about this at the top, right? And the morality lectures worked for certain demographics of people, didn't work for other demographics of people, right? Like the morality work, like black people were all on like price of eggs is high for us too, but you scary, right?
Mhm.
Even ironically, right? Like when you're looking at what was going on in Gaza and you look at the way the Jewish vote came out, they were like, yeah, it's nope, nope, can't do it. Nope, nope, we can't do it, right? Like close to 70, over 70 something percent were like, nah, right? But white people were like, yes,
Hell yeah.
yeah, with a capital H,
Yeah,
right?
it wasn't just like,
Like
yeah, they were like,
it
hell yeah.
was like yeah, like 29.
But again,
Paris got
yo, these white people, they love him. I don't love my politicians. Like, and so if I don't love my politician,
mm.
then I can't spread that love. Like, I could, like, what am I spreading? I'm gonna be like, yo, please go do the right thing, please. Like, that's me constantly organizing on the street. Like, please don't poison us, please. Like, I have Governor Murphy fucking on an article today that came out being like, with all due respect, there's two sides of putting a fourth power plant of black and brown people. Like, fuck you, Murphy. Like, that's how I feel,
Yes.
really. Like. Fuck you, with all due respect. You have no
Well,
respect.
in his
And you're a
neighborhood. That's
Democrat
right.
on the
That's
side,
right.
on this side.
Progressive. He's a progressive Democrat.
He's a progressive. Woo,
Yeah.
Mr. Murphy. Like, I hope you never get a position. I don't care. Yeah, I have nothing left to lose. I'm like, you out. And we on the Trump plan, right? Yeah, yo. That's how I having a kid right now, I've been like really reflecting on these Dems. I'm like, I don't love them. And so that is hard. It's hard to spread that on our side. So when I look at, if I try to like distance my feelings of, oh man, he's so bad, white people voted for racism, I'm also like, they also voted for someone they love. And they might love him because he's racist, but I'm like, let's be real. I grew up watching The Apprentice, right? Like, it's not going to work on
He's
me.
a celebrity.
He's a celebrity, right? Like, not everyone is so tuned into all the fucked up shit he says either. Like, I think that's a big assumption we make, that people watch the news as much as we do. Because I've talked to some folks, because I've been trying to push myself. Like, okay, I can't keep talking to the same people, and because I'm gonna get the same results. Like, let me go talk to some of these folks that I don't get. And what I realized is they're like, yeah, but what politician isn't racist? Everybody's racist. And I was like, okay, that's true. They're like, he just says it. At least you know what he feels. And I was like, okay, that's what you think I should feel. Okay, got that. And they're like, his policies. And I'm like, you really talking about policies? Because it's interesting. When I talk to my folks, they're not really mentioning a policy. They're like, oh, I don't like Harris's laugh. Like, and
Right.
they think that she didn't do anything as vice president. I'm like, fucking vice president has no power. I don't know why no one on the Democratic Party said that. Like, it doesn't matter that she was under Biden's administration. She wasn't responsible for the war in Gaza. Like, she doesn't get to actually make a decision. She probably is not even in the big kids' room, because that's where VPs get, put outside. So anyway, all those things, I'm like, I've been in a reflective mood about what's to come. And again, I'm just like, how do we take this moment to be better as movements? Because we have to fight even if a Democrat or Republican is in office. And I do think we've gotten a little stale as movement, and we're not growing our base, right? Like, more people are not attracted to social justice. I would say less people are attracted to social justice right now than 2 or 4 years ago.
And it's wild because it seems like fewer people are attracted to social justice when social justice was actually winning in this administration. Whether you look at like the billions of dollars that's being funneled, right? Like they're like, look, we're going to give people of color, like communities of color, 40% of like the money that's spent, the billions of dollars that we have, like is going here, like 40 acres, and we don't even know it, and we're like, and that's why I'm just like, on the practical politics for years, we've been talking about these politicians, they talk, but they don't do anything. They don't show any money. There's no money that's shown. They don't spend money.
Then we get the money, but people didn't know the money was out. And these deadlines were tight. You have to like get your stuff together, because they were scared. I will say this from being, close to everything. They were scared that Trump was going to win. And the Dems in a lot of ways were acting like they already lost while, before Biden pulled out. They were like, oh, we're going to lose. And so they were trying to throw money out the window. Like, please get people to apply. When's the deadline? In 2 weeks, right? So it was kind of hard. but it was our first attempt. If we had had 4 more years, I think we would have got some solid things. I mean, we're always begging for money.
Right. Like,
We're
because that's
so
what the
close,
federal
man.
government can do. They literally don't have solutions. They can help
Give money.
us on the
Yeah.
ground who have solutions with billions of dollars.
And we were about to get, I mean, I know that the city will get money. So as that happens, I'll come back on the show. I'll tell y'all, yo, we got this much of the money. We definitely got like the tree planting grant. That's what I know of. And I know our city had plans to apply for a lot more money, you know? So we were so close. So close. And we'll get there again. I also think that, you know, our country didn't just become this way. It's like we have to fight 400 years, right? And so we're not going to fix things with any magical politician. This shit's going to take a grind. And I recognize I'm doing this for like my great grandchildren. Hopefully they have a better life and I'll be a good ancestor, but I'm not going to see the benefit all the way ever. So I hope we all have like that long view on this work, because it's not going to be a magical transformation.
And they're like, this is generational work, right?
Yeah,
So
protracted. Our struggle is protracted.
Absolutely. But in the meantime, I hope we get a lot more fun and exciting in the next 4 years. That's what I hope from our movements.
And find people that can be. It's interesting because like Obama had the trick of being able to be loved, so much loved that he didn't really actually, do much. And there was the, well, I take that back, right? Like there was a lot
He
that
did what he could
right,
as being the first Black president. Like, we also don't cut out folks slack. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you've never had a Black president. Now we're gonna have one, and he's gonna fix everything. That's fucked up. Right. No one expected that of Clinton.
Fair, and it's interesting because it seems like the first administration of Biden was what we wanted from Obama.
Hell yeah. And I talked to people like Black folks who were in administration, and they were like, yo, we could talk about race. Like we couldn't even talk about race under Obama. There was like such a tense atmosphere. And they were like, this is actually the most diverse federal workforce we've ever had at these high levels. And I'm like, yeah, oh my God, why? We need to tell people that. Like people don't know that the old white man actually had a lot more diversity in his senior leadership than other, than our beloved Black president. Like, come on, these are things we should have celebrated, but we couldn't really. And so here we are. We're going to learn. We're going to learn, man, the hard way or the easy way. But pain plus reflection equals progress.
Okay, that's a very optimistic view of the long run of this. I know that Kim Gaddy, Maria Lopez, Henry Rose, I think you all know each other. I'm sure you do.
Of course. Good to see you, Kim. I actually have to run. My baby's crying. It's been a pleasure being on your show. I'm excited. I'll keep listening.
Hip hop artists, very quickly. Favorite hip hop artists? Let us know.
I don't have a favorite. You always ask that. Right now, I'm listening to Tyler, the Creator. That's what I'm vibing with.
The new one. I like it too. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye. Oh, that was a great conversation with incredible organizer, and honored to have 2 other incredible organizers here. That was a great conversation. Kim Gaddy, Henry Rose. I'll let you do the introductions, Zaid.
What happened to Kim?
She popped off, but she'll come back.
Yeah. Well, this segment is double loaded, because not only will we extend the conversation of what a Trump election will mean for question of the environment, right? But we're also going to lift up the legacy of a Newark legend in the late great Francis Rogers Rose, who was mentor to many, and it's incredible that she leaves at this time when there is this incredible energy that's shaping this moment of Black women coming together. Black women did come together to try and do everything they could to get that sister elected, right? And they came together quickly, right? Because something had been percolating the way, in our community by virtue of the way Black women have been holding our community up, right? And Francis Rogers Rose is somebody who showed Black women how to stand up and how to hold up and how to be up and all that. So this is a double conversation. But not only that, we've got her son in this conversation. We ain't gonna just talk about his mom, but he's a bad organizer too. It's a serious labor organizer. So we got some analysis to go around on where do we go from here, in this Trump conference, this new era of Trump madness, and how we lift up those who have gone before us with us doing our best work. So Kim, welcome back, my queen. Right, Henry, it's good to see you, bro. We were just talking this morning. It's hard to realize how long it's been since we've seen each other, right?
Yes, sir.
It's good to see you, beloved. And again, all of our hearts go out to you and your family. The Queen Mother, your family's Queen Mother was one of the Queen Mothers, right? And many of us have been touched by your mother, so we definitely had to have a conversation about why her legacy matters, because it is so exemplary for so many of us. So let's get it in. Welcome to All Politics and Local. Kim, welcome back. Why don't we just segue? I mean, well, this whole question. I mean, Lee Zeldin. Look. What are we looking at? The difference a day makes. What are we looking at in terms of what can happen to this environment with this crazy dude and these strange people that he puts in front of us or in front of him, right? And how that's going to impact our community and our environment. What say you, Madam Kim?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit crazy because we've been here before, and now unfortunately we're here again, and now he knows what didn't work for him before, so it's even more dangerous. He is a climate denier. He is a person that believes in the oil industry, fossil fuel. He doesn't respect the laws that are on the books for our clean air, our water infrastructure. So environmentally, we're in a bad place. When he was president prior to, we didn't even have a conversation with the EPA. And I think maybe our only saving grace is that for the last 50 or 40 something days that's left, they're going to try to get out as much money as they can into our communities, all that infrastructure money that Maria was talking about, all the work that the individuals in EPA have been working on for so many years. We've been fighting. I know I personally been fighting for 23 years in this space. And we have finally came to fruition on some things. And so to have him at the helm is going to be very difficult. But we know that things happen locally. And so now our municipalities and at the state level, we have just got to zero in and make sure we can make New Jersey safe.
Now, Henry.
Yes, sir.
Now, from a labor vantage point, what is it with our white folks in the labor that can't seem to, ride with organized labor, and when they do, it's got to be that racial divide where they just can't deal with working class solidarity the way other countries and workers, the way other countries labor movements do.
Well, first off, don't have me in a position where I'm speaking for white folks. I don't know what would make that look good. You know what I'm saying? I can't speak for white folks. But having said that, we know that settler colonialism, but moreover, the expansion of Europe that took place starting with Columbus made the white working class just a different group of people. They materially benefited from their expansion and have never really been able to find solidarity with people of color. And then the Democratic Party, let's be real. I mean, I listen to Kamala a lot, and she sure did not talk about being working class. She didn't talk about a working class agenda. She talked about middle class.
Yes, he did.
And I'm not quite sure whether people necessarily felt that. We knew that white men, since the Civil Rights Act, have never voted against the Republican Party, with the possible exception of Clinton 96. We know that white women have never voted Democrat since the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, with the possible exception of Clinton. And the Democrats did not tailor their message or put their work into turning out the people who would have voted for them. And so Vice President Harris got 14, 15 million votes less than what Joe Biden got. So anyway, that's 2 cents there.
No, it's more than 2 cents because folks need to hear that, right? And folks need to come to terms with that. We had this conversation at the top of the show. You know, the managers of the Democratic Party are way out of touch in terms of messaging and the priorities and the agenda. They're way out of touch. And
you think so?
But I have a. Oh, you were saying, Henry?
No, I was just going to say that I don't think they're out of touch. I think that their constituency and their donor base and what they're trying to do is in contradiction. And because of that, they then get in positions where they attempt to mask the contradiction. It's not out of touch. They work in the plan they were, but ultimately it's status quo. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're fine. No, y'all the guests. We want to hear y'all. You know?
I mean, but they're a party of capital, a party of imperialism, a party, and with America being a white supremacist country, you know, they don't really cut too hard against that grain.
Yeah, and I just also want to interject, and then just having a female, a black sister running, it just shows you that this country, and it showed you when Hillary ran as well, this country is not ready to vote for any woman leadership. Kamala was definitely totally more qualified, put Trump to shame. And we all should be able to agree on that. But the reality is the power of a black woman and what that position would have meant for this country and for so many white men, Hispanic men, right? I just got to put that out there. They was not supportive. I'm not going to go against my brothers because the black men did support Kamala. Maybe not at the degree that they supported Baraka, but they did support. And so that is a serious issue that we also have to address in this country. The lack of respect that they have for black women and all of our achievements and our ability to be leaders of this free nation.
And when you say that, I'm always thinking as well, right? Like you put race and class in that, right? Or race and gender in that, as in like you had. For me, it just seems like most other demographics at some point supported black women for president. Even Hispanic men supported Hillary in 2016, right? In terms of that, the two demographics that never support women for leadership in terms of the presidential race have been white people, like white men, white women. So I'm always like, just say white people are the problem, right? Like, because there might not be other problems, right? And I think that the ways in which whiteness works, like I'd be very surprised if many of those Latino males were not embodying the racism that we know exists within those communities as well, right? Like we know there's a lot of anti-blackness that goes historically. When Henry Louis Gates did his documentary on Black in Latin America, he broke that down, right? When he was talking about so I think that Trump's message is appealing,
a whole lot of them,
right? his message is appealing because it's a white nationalist message, and it's a white national, and whiteness always takes in new white people, right? Like if it takes in new Italians and takes in new Irish, why are we surprised? Like Marco Rubio, right? Like we were talking about like Ted Cruz, right? Like and then let's go even further. The leader of the Proud Boys called himself Latino, right? He was the leader of the Proud Boys, right? White supremacist organization, Latino leader. He was dark too, right? And so the person who killed Trayvon Martin, because couldn't have a black person walking around in this community,
He
self-identified
wanted to
as
be a white
Latino,
cop. He
right?
wanted to be one of the
So
guys.
right, so even in our understandings of race, like it's so much now that on the census they'd be like Latino white, Latino black, right? So I don't think that the Latino men supporting Trump in large numbers, I don't know if that is against an understanding of like or a lens of this really is just an extension of white supremacy. Like the white people don't support women leadership. It seems like most groups that don't identify like that in majority, they aren't like Stacey Abrams got 83% of black men voting for her. And they were like, black men ain't gonna come out and vote for you. So it seems like it is for all the talk about black men and black women not getting along and not working together, it seems like we the most in lock.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, and we are the individuals that have so much to lose, right? And so when you think about just the politics, what is happening not only at a national level but in our communities, we are those individuals too who are carrying the brunt of the most racist acts, from environment, from health, right, from education. You know, the list just goes on, and we continue to not be able to rise above it. And why is that? It's all
I
about race and income.
but I was gonna ask you a very specific question, right? When you were talking before, you were like, we had been fighting for the stuff that we were getting. Like when you and Maria were talking, when Maria was talking earlier, you were saying some of the exact same sentiment that she talked about before, when it was like we had been getting money and attention for the programs that worked within our communities like we had never gotten before. Can you tell us about that? And then, of course, the natural question is the disconnect between the respect that Black communities got in the environmental movement and the money that is being now even pushed. Pushed. They were like, look, Trump about to come here and take all this stuff. We tried to give it away, right? Like, can you tell us about that in the Biden Trump administration and why no one heard anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think individuals heard about it. I don't think they trusted or believed that it was something that was really happening, right? Because there was so much, man. We're talking trillions of dollars that is just sitting, you know, and billions have been released into communities. But there was also separated by different divisions. Like we had meetings with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and they went for, we told them you could go for $500 million to begin to address the environmental issues that's harming our folks in these port communities and fence line communities. They was able to win 344 million. They came to the table, they talked to us. They talked to us about what programs. Then you have municipalities, only municipalities that could go after so much money. The city of Newark, all of our cities, they was able to go after millions of dollars. Then you have money for states, right? And then you had buckets of money for individual organizations like ICC, Southward Environmental Alliance, like myself, these nonprofits. And so this is where the power should be. And we was hoping to have 4 more years so then you can really see it in a larger scale, because now you can leverage. You can leverage the millions of dollars that Maria was talking about that ICC can get. You can leverage the millions of dollars that the city of Newark, the Port Authority, right? All these other institutions to bring real power into our community. And so under Biden-Harris administration, they finally got it. and they understood the importance of environmental justice. They understood that you had to include those who was most marginalized from the communities that was impacted the most. What you will see with a Trump administration is a reverse of all of that, and he doesn't care. I mean, how can you have somebody, a potential nominee over the health department that is not a doctor or have no background in that? Like, that is just ludicrous, especially when you think about 1 out of 4 children in the city of Newark suffer from asthma, right? We are dying prematurely from all these ailments, cancers, and all these kind of things. And you're putting, I mean, it's a joke, right? Then you want to think about destroying the educational system, right? So, it is totally the opposite of the things that the Biden-Harris administration was at least putting the people most impacted at the forefront, allowing us for the first time to really have a seat and meaningful participation in what was happening. I think the disconnect to the masses of people is just like with environmental justice. People think that the environment is just over there. Your environment is at the core of your very existence. You can't survive without water. You can't survive without clean air to breathe. But we continue to separate it in silos and keep it over there and not bring it to our educational system where our children can't learn if they're sick. Teachers can't teach if they're walking to sick buildings and they're dying of cancers, right? So that's the disconnect. And I try to meet people where they are and say, listen, the environment is right at the core. Everything. It's your job, it's your home, it's where you pray, right? It's all of that. And so we keep getting disconnected because people want to think, oh, it's not bothering me, until they turn on their water faucet and mud comes out, and then everybody will scream and understand why we're fighting. But they just take the environment, as a given, that I'm gonna wake up every day and have the luxury to have, air to breathe, water to eat, and access to food. When in some countries that does not exist.
When you're looking at that level of disconnect, right? Because what you're saying is heartbreaking, right? And it's heartbreaking in that you're saying, it sounds to me, what you're saying is that under the Biden-Harris administration, the federal government, for pretty much the first time since you've been doing this for over 23, 25 years at one particular organization, but probably longer than that in just the environmental justice movement within our communities. You're like, the first time you're sitting down with them and they get it. They're literally putting billions of dollars into the communities that actually need it. It's on a ground level where people who are doing the work can actually do it. Now, when I didn't see one ad that took that into account. I've never heard, like I've not heard about this in this way. What I hear
You hear
online,
infrastructure though, right? You hear infrastructure.
right? And we heard the infrastructure bill was passed. I
Yeah.
also know I wouldn't have known it much from the campaign. I knew the infrastructure bill was passed. I knew that the Inflation Reduction Act was passed that had a lot to do with the money that you're talking about. But I know that just because I read about it, right? I'm a debate coach, we debate about this stuff, right? That's how I know about it. I don't know about it really from the campaign. I don't know about it from and also, is it also on us, right? Like us local people who like the people on the internet who are talking about Biden administration, Harris, they have not done nothing for our communities. We've got nothing, right? And they're very convincing. Like, what have they done? And you mention stuff, and they're like, no. And but you are a person who's on the ground. And what I've noticed is there's a difference between people who are doing the work on the ground and who are the actual activists, the people who are doing civil rights activism. We'll talk about the Justice Department that got them things that hadn't been got before on in terms of civil rights, in terms of consent decrees, in terms of the things that were positive, right? I was at the same thing in terms of now environmental movement, right? Like you talk about the different programs for violence prevention that were being done at a local level and then funded larger on a federal level, right? Like, so all of the different activists that we've had on our show for the last like 4 years have been talking about the method in which this administration worked that was different than the others. They saw themselves as connecting to community organizations with money so they can actually make changes that were good, but it didn't translate it into votes. Do you think that the amount of actual we gave money to these communities, but they didn't come out? They had fewer numbers come out in than they did 4 years ago. How does that work? How does that translate? What happens?
Well, I think also, and this is where, Brother Henry could jump in too, we have elected officials that depend on unions and union membership to move a lot. And, I am not anti-union. I know that is the backbone and that helps a lot of people have a living, but you had a disconnect between the people who are union members and the leadership. The top leaders of the unions didn't even come out with an endorsement.
Right.
All this money, all what was happening, right? So you get these disconnects, right? But I also think that, again, people felt like Trump is no way going to get elected again. I just really think, especially our folks, really felt that there's no way this idiot, right, is this person who just can't even put a sentence together, right, is going to win. And they took for granted these $1 million, checks that his Musk or whatever his name is was giving out. Right? They took for granted that, oh, they don't have a field operation. We're killing them in the field. Our message is resonating. No, they didn't. So that's you have to, again, meet people where they are, and we have a tendency to speak to people with a language they don't understand. And so that's why, as an EJ organizer and activist in the community, we dissect that information and we tell them exactly how it's impacting your housing situation, your community development. When you think about the racist laws that start with just our zoning board, right? And our planning board. So we try to break it all down so people can understand how it impacts them and we connect it to their everyday life. The Democratic Party, they don't know how to do that. They have these self-appointed leaders who need to get out the way. They're too old. They've been around too long. They can't identify with the young generation. That's the one group that Harris actually motivated at the HBCU colleges, on college campuses all across. My daughter's in California. I mean, I had to just stay on the phone an hour talking to my daughter. She just couldn't understand how she lost this race. So there is a lot of energy. And we always say, when will our youth step up? How are the children in our community? What are we doing? And then we put these outdated, individuals who no longer are relevant to run these elections and can't connect to the people and the people's everyday struggle. That's our problem. And that's why people didn't come out and vote.
Henry, or Zai, do you have something to add, or another a question, man? I know you were looking for something.
Running my mouth. I was muted.
Okay.
She said it. She said it, and that's an extension of a conversation that we've been having for the since 20 at least. Just on the show with us. Ed especially has been pushing that line, and that's what I meant when I was referring to the managers of the Democratic Party in messaging, right? And then they just stayed, right. And Henry put another spin on it, and I said they're out of touch. He said, they know they're in touch with their agenda. He put another spin on it that merits looking at for real, But the disconnect, minimizes impact. And if folks don't get it, they don't get what you're selling. You got to, come with another pitch.
And it's
another
interesting.
product.
But when you say another product, it seems like from this conversation, at least when it comes to environmental justice, the product was better than the product that had ever been in previous administrations, and the product was pretty extensively good, right? Like,
Agreed. And so if we're talking about from the environmental justice end, and it's been a few years at this point since I worked with Kim. I know that Kim brought me in, and I worked with Kim for quite a few years in environmental justice. Have not been doing that lately. I've been in labor. But on the environmental justice end, absolutely, it was better. But I'm saying that the Democratic Party as a product, and they made a lot of messaging mistakes. How did they let Trump portray himself as the agent of change?
Oh my God!
How when Trump was talking about, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, they didn't wrap COVID deaths around his neck like a bell.
Oh my God!
How 4 years ago, we had people. I know that the hospitals that I work with in New York and Elmhurst, in Bellevue, Harlem, and Lincoln, we had ice trucks outside holding the bodies.
That's right. Same thing in Newark.
All over the country, though, it was the same thing. But how did they not wrap it around his neck? I didn't hear anything about he bungled COVID and your auntie died, your cousin died. But they playing touch while Democrats playing tackle. I mean, the Republicans playing tackle.
100%.
So they should have wrapped that around his neck like a bell.
100%.
He shouldn't have been able to go any place without you screwed up and more than 1 million Americans died.
Right.
more than any other industrialized country, right?
Right.
And you were the president and you screwed it up, and they should have wrapped that around his neck and wrapped around his neck talking about putting bleach in people. How did that not run on a constant loop? Just that level of incompetence, of intellectual, I don't even know I'm sorry to use the word intellect when speaking about Trump.
Because he ain't got none.
But that level of idiocy, I'm just saying though, because as they were talking about that, he's for you with the trans stuff, but there's no way that shouldn't have wrapped around his neck. And then part of it is the Democrats who spend $1 billion on a campaign do not put in the money on a consistent basis in our communities so that people are organizing on the ground all the time.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's
instead they parachute in at the last minute. So the entire time and everything that Kim was talking about, EJ, was true. With the labor movement, he did a lot of great things for labor.
Yep.
But that needed to be messaged on a constant basis. Now, some unions did better than others. And there were quite a few. So the Teamsters in particular didn't back anybody, though a bunch of their locals did back Harris. The painters and the building trades have a notorious racialized record.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Racist.
Yeah. I mean, just the building trades, even if you go back to Coweta Towers, if you go back to the 50s and 40s, the building trades in particular have always been a tough. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, you were saying it.
Yeah, no, but but then you did have the vast majority of unions did back Harris Trump. Mm-hmm. But the membership, even though we gotta say that you're more likely to get white women and white men if they're in a union voting Democrat than not. But the unions also have been devastated by the 50-year war just that the war on them, since whatever class collaboration that took place coming out of World War II, that from Reagan, but also actually from Carter did a bit of it. And you remember when Ford told New York City drop dead.
I did. Sure did.
Right.
Sure did. Sure did. Sure did.
That's
Instead,
true.
and aping that bullshit of reverse discrimination. You know, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know Kim, at least in part, was speaking to that. If we remember what Reagan did, and this is demonstrating how damn old I am, but how much money was pulled out of urban state funds, money that went directly to the cities, and they started doing block grants. There's just so much. As the lords of capital decided to cut back on the working class in America, and because the American working class, predominantly white, were unable to see a true solidarity either internally, much less internationally, and so they get dragged to the bottom. Anyway,
100%.
I like how you say like anyway, right?
100%.
So
100%.
that was an interesting point that was made, especially with that point that struck me was that Democrats need to spend money on getting their message out
On the
all
base.
consistently, right? On the base. But the question I have also is, isn't that, and this is to what again, Maria in the last section was talking about, isn't it up to those of us who are within the community to really, because it really is not the Democrats' community, it's ours, right? And if we've got to make sure that the people in our community actually vote, and because with me, it's like we're talking with in the first section with myself, Zaid, and Ed. I would have much rather that the people who stayed home voted for a third party candidate, so at least we know what they're voting. Like we know where the disconnect is, right? And I think that to some extent we've got to do a better job socializing our communities. For you've got to, like, yes, go to your community meetings, yes, do something to get involved a little bit locally, just a little bit, right? Just some issue, one issue, just pick an issue, right, in your community to care a little bit about.
so
And you were saying,
no, so I was going to say that it's not the Democratic community, it's ours. But if we're Democrats, and if I heard Maria correctly, what her and the last brother, and I was kind of on the outside, I was on the outside in that conversation, but what I thought they clearly said is the Democrats can fund stuff.
Exactly.
If the Democrats said to Kim, we need you to produce a larger number of Newark voters over the next 4 years, and we're going to fund you with $150,000, $200,000 a year, Kim could hire a couple of people and make that happen.
You would definitely figure out how to do it. That's right.
So when I was saying that,
Here's another point. Finish your point, though, and there's something I want to add.
yeah, but that if they were serious about it, knowing who works on the ground, instead of parachuting money in at the end, you need to put money in at the beginning. It's just like I would tell my children.
Like they sustain it everywhere else.
Yeah, but just like I tell my children, if you do 20 minutes worth of your math every day, the day before the test, you don't have to keep your ass up till 3 o'clock in the morning. Right? So instead, this is then that last minute stuff. And understand me, I'm not blaming Vice President Harris.
right?
This is the Democratic apparatus as a whole. And remember the way that when Obama actually had an external force capable of moving, he defunded and folded everything into the DCC. Go ahead, Zaid, and I'm sorry for talking so much, y'all.
Because I wanted to build on Jonathan's question, your answer, and also segue, because we got to spend some time talking about your mama for real, right? But these are, Jonathan, to your question, this is a son and daughter of Newark who grew up on that generation of Black organizers who became their elected leadership and who had a history and a working relationship, who kept their base informed and mobilized. Right? That's one of the unsung. We talk about Ken Gibson being the first mayor, in a mirror, driving Black power. But what did that look like operationally in terms of organizing? That's what it looked like, right? In this town, we ain't got to go nowhere else to understand that. In this town, that's what it looked like, right? And a whole lot of Democrats, whether they are Negro operatives or managerial, money changers or whoever, a lot in our community in terms of those folks who they put in front of us do not do that, do not come from that. And we have to, reorganize ourselves on the ground in our community to demand that and produce leadership from that.
So other thing, just 2 more cents to that, Zaido, is the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party operatives and the bigwigs are scared of an organized Black community because we may go left.
That's right.
Tell the truth, we better go left.
That's right. They
like,
cities down.
You put some money in and organize those Negroes, and next thing they talking about self-determination.
Yeah.
And so it's better that they're unorganized and we don't have to worry about them deciding to get revolutionary. Anyway.
Well, listen, in the few minutes we have left, and we needed a whole lot more time. Let's talk about our new ancestor, right? Henry, growing up, LaFrancis, right? Kim, your relation, and and I was trying to think of, if we can just name the sisters over the years who she has touched, as an organizer, as a community mother, representing that tradition that I just described. We could be here for days, but y'all got to talk about Queen Mother. We gotta have some words on Queen Mother.
I'm gonna let Henry start off.
When I think about her impact on the world, of course, I think about her impact first and foremost upon me. My mother was my constant counsel in the world. And as they said in the mob movies, a wartime consigliere.
Yes, sir.
Because you didn't have to debate with her whether you should fight. Be like, Ma, this and this is happening. Should I fight? She's like, of course you should fight. Let's figure out how. But there's no way you shouldn't fight. And she ran a great race. And if anybody had 9 lives, it was her. From her heart transplant and then her having cardiac arrest when she was on a table.
Yes.
She had cardiac arrest and fell out in front of a Navy medic who knew how to pump her chest. she had a couple of strokes, and so and didn't really lose nothing.
Yeah.
But 9 Lives for Real touched so many lives, and was always about the people. You know, when I look at even now, was looking at all the stuff that she's in, all of the organizations she's part of, even now, and it make me feel lazy. Like, damn, I need to be doing more. So anyway, I don't want to get teary. So Kim, carry me a little bit here, because you know, too much talking and thinking about my mama will get me teary.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you know, just being a student at Rutgers University when I met Dr. Rose, and now her, after serving as the founder and president emeritus of the International Black Women's Congress, for her to select me and with the board to now take the reins of this organization and move it forward was just a testament of who she was. She always lifted up Black women. You know, our sister Zakiya Zaman used to say, we had a conversation the other night, and she said, she was always African, always Black. You ain't have to question nothing about Dr. Rose when it came to her people, and especially women. You know, I became Crump's campaign manager because Dr. Rose told me, she said she's ran so many times, go and be her campaign manager. We need Mildred Crump elected to the North Municipal Council. And I did it just because she told me to. And I believed that it was time for Crump to be the first Black councilwoman in the city. All the students she touched from Rutgers, from Princeton, from Drew, you know, Larry Ham is one of her students. You know, all of us, she instilled in us. You know, we was fighters from the beginning, but what she instilled to us about our community and our people and the importance of it, you know, that is going to live forever. And I'm just so grateful that I had 40 plus years to just sit at her foot and learn from her. And like you said, they don't make leaders like we are. They don't make anymore. And we got to get back to that. Yes. We got to get back to making sure we're bringing up that next level of leadership. And so IBWC is going to bring back our Genesis Rites of Passage program. And we're going to be focusing on so many other things because her legacy will live on.
Tell everybody about IWBC for those that don't know.
Huh?
Tell everybody about IWBC for those that don't know.
Come on, Henry, because Henry, you wrote our mission.
That was the International Black Women's Congress. And I guess 2 things just real briefly I'd like to say. At one point in the last 8 to 10 years, I was talking to my mother. I can't remember how the conversation went up, but you know that she got her master's at Fisk. And she was a dorm director there. And so she says to me, you know, the first National Action Group meeting was in my dorm room. I said, who was there, Ma? She said, oh, I think it was Bevel and John Lewis, Marion Barry. And I'm like, what year was this? She's like, oh, 1958. So this was SNCC, pre-SNCC.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That, you know, Metner, I was like, well, Diane Nash. She was like, no, Diane wasn't there yet. And I said, not there physically. She said, no, baby, she wasn't there spiritually just yet. So it's just a testament that if we're thinking 1958, you know how, you know, that's 66 years ago.
Right. That's right. That's right.
So just how long we've been in that. And my mother was somewhat competitive. I don't know whether people realize that or not, because at one point, I think I was reading something in A. Philip Randolph, and it was an A. Philip Randolph address from, I guess it was the 1957 graduating class at Morgan State University, which both my parents attended. So I'm talking to my father, said something about it. He's like, oh yeah, I was there. That was my graduating class, blah, blah. My mother had graduated the year before. So I says, Ma, did you know that A. Philip Randolph addressed the Morgan graduating class in 57, and it's in this book, blah, blah. She said, oh yeah, I was there. I was there supporting your father. I had graduated the year before. She says, but his commencement speaker was almost as good as mine. I said, who was your commencement speaker, Ma? She said, Martin Luther King. I just shut up. But she was just like, yeah, there is no one up on me.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that, and coming back to Kim, right, one of the things that, great folks among us like her is that as tradition bearers, they were also, champions of us as being bearers of excellence, right? Commitment and excellence, right? So, yeah, if we need to be our best. She showed a whole lot of folks how to do that.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And IBWC, our organization is about lifting up exemplary role models of Black women. You could check us out on our website, IBWC. Just look us up. And this is a serious global movement, making sure that women of African descent from all walks of life, they can come join our table, and I just tell you, Dr. Rose she just done so much, but her vision was serious. The charge is serious. This organization is serious, and nobody's going to run it like she did. But we're going to continue to empower our sisters, and we respect and thank our men who stand at the door. As Henry could tell you, they stand at the door and they protect us while we go to work. And
I've had that once or twice.
Yes,
I wouldn't dress well enough either. I was embarrassed, but it wouldn't be no stuff happening on my watch with them.
Yeah. So we got some true sisters from all walks of life. Before Ivana Vanzant was who she was, she came to our conference. I mean, Dr. Betty Shabazz. These are all like Henry said. The list is just the women that I've met and the men that I met, and she was installed also. Like Dr. Rose was the truth. She was the truth. But the people she touched, we're gonna stand up and we're gonna continue to fight every day.
Every day.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Oh, Jonathan, you want to take us out? Take this segment out and ask the ritual question.
All right, just a ritual question, and and just a change of the segue into our next section. Who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group, or who you're listening to now, who you're inspired by now? Just any of that.
I'll just say I was listening to Throwback, Eve, Who's That Girl? I didn't want to say my others that always go with Queen Latifah or but Eve, I've been kind of listening to that throwback music, talking about women, and this is the era and the century of women. So that's what I've been listening to.
And I guess I even got more dust on me than Kim, because I'm gonna end up with Rakim and Nas would probably be my two favorite artists. I got a lot of respect for Kendrick as an artist, and a lot of respect for J. Cole as an artist.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for this session, man. Like this has been it's been a really really informative night for all of us. So
Absolutely.
honored
Absolutely.
honored to
Oh,
have both of you.
two other students. So for sure, I know Cornell West
Yeah.
was a student of my mother's at Princeton.
Mm,
How about that?
Yeah,
okay.
no, absolutely, because he actually shouted her out in one of his books
He sure did.
as
Mhm.
someone that set him on the path.
Mm.
Now she was not quite positive, but a certain Michelle Robinson
Oh.
Yeah,
was
I
in
heard that.
Princeton at that same time period. And if she did anything in Black studies or
Mm.
about Black women, I think studying under my mother was unavoidable.
Right.
Anyway,
Nice.
Loaded,
Okay.
loaded, fully loaded,
Oh,
fully
thank
loaded.
you.
all right now.
Thank
Long
you.
live the
No, thank
Francis
you.
Rogers
Thank
Road.
you.
Carry on the tradition.
Thank you. Peace and
All right
blessings.
now.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you all. Bye bye. Can we talk
Take care.
soon?
Okay. Bye bye.
Zahid will talk soon.
Whenever I'm at your back, beloved.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jonathan. Bye bye.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you, Jonathan. Bye bye.
Oh man. Trying to get my head together. Now I'm getting a little emotional.
I know. And then you hit me with that. Ask the question. I was like, all right, well, trying to change the mood a little bit, I guess. Huh? Right? Right. I mean, we should have. Yeah, I'm glad we did save that for the end though. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I didn't know. I really didn't know about his mom and
She was
the
a
incredible
real
work that
presence,
she did.
steady for a long time. The late great John Oliver Killings, one of the great writers to come out of Harlem, said, in the age of assassination, and we need to figure out how to keep some of our folks around so they can be long distance runners. She was definitely one
Mm,
of our long distance runners, and we all remember when he was talking about those heart ailments she had. We remember all
right.
that, and they
Right.
were really close calls, and she didn't miss a beat. We were hoping that when she shifted to Virginia, because this was in this process of her making a transition, right, from Newark to Virginia, that she was going to act like a retired person. Oh hell no, she took ibuprofen with her. Got some sisters rolling down. She's a national. She knew folks all over the country. And just kept right on rolling. But important to lift up is how she prepared, Kim to, come in and take the reins of that work,
Mm,
and pushing her out into some real space in an out front way, the way we're supposed to, reproduce leadership in our community.
right.
Right,
Right.
right in the thick of the work, honoring it as tradition, right? And we got some sharp young folks that I'm looking forward to having in this conversation. They got a lot of that in them, right? And I don't.
Mhm.
Did Serge come through? He didn't get through yet.
No, it's us too.
This is Dante and Nadia. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Now, so we pivot now from environmental justice and labor and labor struggle to the attacks on a whole lot of us
Mm,
that are
right.
right up front. That's going to be, very frontal and very pivotal, and it's going to definitely sharpen the racial divide in a very violent, discentering and disrupting in
Right.
harmful way. We got a taste of it in that last administration. We got a taste, but the die is a bit different. The capacity to be more harmful
Mhm.
is a bit more ample. So the task of resistance is much greater. Nadia Morsey, Make the Road, New Jersey. Dante Apostege from New Jersey Alliance of Immigrant Justice. And we were looking for Serge Demefack. Serges American Friends Service Committee, their Black Immigrant Program. All strong voices of immigration justice in our midst for a good minute. But one I wanted to, I definitely, I'm really glad to have all of you here. But more than that, I'm not what Nadia did just this past weekend.
is something that, you know, and I've told all of my, because one of the things that they want to see us fall into is a space of fear, right? Space of fear of them, right? The white folks, white supremacy has always been built on this myth of invincibility, you know. But Nadia, rightfully, right away, we're going to unite and we're going to resist, right? We there was calls here and there. How's everybody doing? Da 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 da. I said, no, baby, what you doing is what's up, right? What's up? And I wanted us to start this conversation with the fact that she did that, right? And she did that, and it's in a wellspring of some things that need to happen, and that need to happen right away, right? So Nadia, talk to us, baby, right? What did you tell us about Saturday? Why was that so important? Who turned out? Because a lot of folks turned out, right? And in the language of Dr. King, to you both, where do we go from here?
I think that's my cue, Brother Zaid. I want to thank you for the invitation, and I want to thank you for taking my call just hours after we had gotten the results. I think the grounding is really important, so I want to just sort of center us in this moment. New Jersey is a state of immigrants. Of a population of 9 million, more than 2 million identify as immigrants. 1 in every 3 people identify as a child of an immigrant. And more than 500,000 people who live in this state that are immigrants are living without status, which means they don't have protection from deportation and are in great risk of being separated from their families under a Trump administration. I think the other piece that is important to put into context is the Donald Trump administration tried in earnest to deport the masses in the first go around, and we should trust and believe that he learned from his mistakes, and that this go around he will partner with America First and other militia, and he will rain psychological terror on our communities, and that's not light, or we don't mean it hyperbolically. He has most recently said, when asked how much it would cost to deport 1 million immigrants, which is his goal in his first year, he said that he thought that maybe it'd be $1 trillion, but there was no price tag. Those are his words, no price tag on what he would do. And when we're talking about deporting 1 million people, some of it is deportation and some of it is concentration. We saw this in the very origins of this country's history.
You say concentration. What do you mean by concentration?
I mean worker camps, concentration camps, essentially prisons, perhaps renamed so that it sort of captures this this idea that somehow fleeing violence and coming to this space and not having lawful status in imagined borders means that these people are a risk to our, means that immigrant New Jerseyans are a risk to our overall safety, and that these would be civil cases, that it is very possible that we should expect that many will be deported and many will be put in concentration camps to work for low wages. I think the other part, sort of again, just putting things into context, is New Jersey is keenly set up for mass deportations. We have the Port Authority, we have Newark Airport, And we sort of have a target on our back because in the governor's first administration, ran on a pro-immigrant agenda, which saw his success. We became a sanctuary state. We have sanctuary cities. We have the immigrant. We have the directive that forbids police officers and local law enforcement from engaging with immigration. And the Donald Trump administration has made it clear that they want to make an example of those states. Now, I don't say that, and I don't say this last piece because I believe that we need to walk things back. I believe that the state is in an incredibly powerful moment to underline clearly the values of this country. We are walking into a gubernatorial race. It is one of only 2 gubernatorial races in the entire country at that time that follows immediately a presidential race. And it will be a referendum of a people's response to what the Trump administration wants to commit in Black and brown communities. And we have a responsibility as New Jersey residents to come out clearly and build a multiracial democracy and announce very clearly within 1 year of a Trump administration taking office that people, real people, working class people are not interested in that agenda. And by setting an agenda and by building a multiracial democracy in the year to come, we will be able to inspire other people, young people, people of color, working class people all throughout the country to also rise up in the gubernatorial races locally. But we have a responsibility not only to build a fortress for ourselves, but we have a responsibility to the rest of the country to set an example of what is possible.
100%. 100%. 100%. Doctor, jump in this conversation, son.
Yeah. Thank you, Zaid. I think Nedia, what you're saying, I think about showing the country what is possible, I think is so timely. And what we're expecting from the incoming administration is, as Nedia pointed, he learned from his mistakes. It's going to get worse. It's going to get nasty, but we're here. We're here for it, and we're going to fight and push against this anti-immigrant policy that he has set up. I mean, in Trump v. U.S. just last year in 2023, we saw that there is absolute immunity for criminal liability now for sitting presidents, and this case allows the president to weaponize the DOJ to target his political opponents. I mean, we saw that in his last presidency in Trump v. Hawaii, where the court upheld this Muslim ban, right? Of course, they tweaked it because they said, this is flagrantly discriminatory, so we're going to throw in Venezuela too, to appease the critics who keep calling it a Muslim ban. But this was undeniably flagrantly racist attack under the guise of national security. And what we see happening is this continuance of this anti-immigrant rhetoric in this second presidency. And what can we do to show the country what is possible? Well, I mean, there's a lot of efforts that we're pushing here in the state, particularly on private detention. And as Nedia pointed in the Immigrant Trust Directive, and codifying that and making it law by introducing pushing legislators to introduce the Immigrant Trust Act, the bill that's currently in the legislature. Yeah, so these are 2 things that are really big for us, really top priorities here in Jersey, is our push against private detention and the Immigrant Trust Act.
Take a minute. Let's build on the Immigrant Trust Act. Let's give everybody a background of just what that is and what that will do and why it's important.
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle this first, and then Nedia, feel free to fill in any gaps. But this ITA is the Immigrant Trust Act, is building on the Immigrant Trust Directive that came out in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And the directive is basically this order that comes from the Attorney General's office that dictates that law enforcement agencies won't assist federal law enforcement in their immigration operations. In other words, it's saying, hey, Jersey is going to use its resources for itself, we're not going to share or use our resources to further assist federal authorities in doing whatever they want to do with immigrant communities. And with the Immigrant Trust Act, well, it codifies it. We know that the Immigrant Trust Directive is, as good as it is, it's merely a directive. It could change if the next AG were to come and undo that. So what we want to do is codify that, make it into law. And what it would do is three main things. It would build community trust. It would encourage immigrant communities to engage with and access public services like healthcare, schools, and law enforcement without fear of deportation or family separation. Two, it would limit information sharing. It would restrict the collection and sharing of someone's immigration status by public institutions. Of course, there's some exceptions if they need to know someone's immigration status for like eligibility purposes, but generally the rule would be that public institutions won't be collecting that information. And if they have it, they won't share it with federal authorities. And three, the Immigrant Trust Act would enhance transparency and accountability, something that's is really important for us, given that we had some transparency and accountability issues happen in New Jersey a while back. But the ITA would require law enforcement agencies to report any cooperation with immigration enforcement annually, just to see what the movement is as far as any collaboration between our state offices, our state entities, and federal law enforcement.
And what needs to get that? What needs to happen, right? Because we got stuff coming up, right? What needs to happen to get it done, to get it over the line? Because we ain't got the boldest Democrats in New Jersey.
Yeah, Nadia, feel free to step in.
Yeah, I mean, so for folks who may not be familiar with our process, right? But the bill still needs to go through both the Senate and the Assembly before it gets to the governor's desk. I think the concern that we have now is that oftentimes we make the assumption that parties reflect.
Come on, say it. I need you to say it. Yes. Come on.
That parties reflect on the election results and perhaps think more deeply about when you abandon your base, you will see what happened last week happen. But I think very often we forget that we came to find ourselves in that position where parties abandon their base because they're so deeply disconnected. And I think we need to face the reality that our work does not change because Trump is a terror, and people like to joke about how he's a Cheeto, and that we all are politically aligned because he's awful. Very often when right-wing extremists take power, oftentimes the left thinks that it should move more to the right. So much so that there's almost nowhere left to go. And so I think it is incredibly important to remember that we must continue to organize. We should absolutely at no point make the assumption that folks are more sympathetic to our cause because Donald Trump is a right-wing, racist, sexist extremist. We are not all politically aligned in the same way. We do not believe altogether in the abolition of borders. We do not believe in abolition. We do all not believe in reparations. And it is a responsibility before a Trump administration, before the first Trump administration, that we as working class people needed to socialize that agenda. And that is still our responsibility. So I say all this to say, if you have engaged your legislator, your representative around the Immigrant Trust Act, and there was no bite for it before, which we can safely make the assumption there wasn't because we don't have it. Go back now and set the stage for what is coming. When immigrant communities are under attack, we are all unsafe. When immigrants are under attack, we can face economic collapse. One of the data points that I didn't share earlier, but I think is important, is that immigrants make up 29% of New Jersey's labor force. They account for 41% of all STEM workers. That includes both folks that are cleaning our hospitals and also working as nurses. And
oh man!
All right,
Is that her or me?
No, that she came out, but hopefully we'll come back in. I was going to ask both of you the obvious question, right? And the obvious question is, New Jersey is was blue, now purple. There were a lot of people who were very much moved by Trump's message, which was very clear. It was very, very right, and mobilized people in New Jersey who hadn't voted before, Ocean County, et cetera. Like a lot of the red areas came much, much redder, like much, much closer, and very specifically around the issue of immigration and how and Trump's policy toward undocumented people, right? And in this climate, right? I understand. I mean, I hear you can't go to the right. I hear there are moral claims to be made, but in New Jersey, are what is New Jersey right now a more of a right wing place based on the issue of immigration, based on the incredible white lash that's been had, that seems to get growing supports from community of color, right? Like I remember working with students uh, who were undocumented in terms of college, right? And one of the experiences I had is that people who looked like even them didn't want to help them, right? It was not, and that gets hypercharged now in terms of uh, seeing the ways in which even there's less support from various communities of color, right, for dealing with immigration the way that New Jersey had dealt with it before. Do you find that it is even more difficult to get support even from places where that support was had before? Do you feel a different or change in the climate?
Yeah, I mean, what we feel right now is that we really do have to uh, get to work. I mean, the advocates in this space have been pushing pro-immigrant law and policy for a really long time, and I think that the results of the election, at this point, it's like, okay, we were grieving, and now we have to move on and get to work and really, really push and leverage the relationships that we have with legislators to get our priorities done. I mean, ITA is something that we want to get more traction on, and we really do have to push the legislators to understand that even though there might be this they might want to sway a little more to the right because that feels safe for them. We have to ensure, and we have to really get our message across that it actually isn't, right? When you say you're representing New Jersey, we have to get them to understand that they are representing immigrant families and immigrant communities that want the ITA to pass. And we really do have to get that message across to them in a way that we haven't before. Really, we have to really leverage those relationships and make this top priority in New Jersey right now. I want to just also talk about how important it is to push back against private detention. Yeah. Let's do it.
Come to detention, right? That's our local question, but I absolutely wanted to reaffirm why that demonstration that Make the Road did on Saturday was so important.
Right.
They made that statement, and they used a united statement for some of everybody. Right? Okay, so this is what's coming. This. Let's show our response.
Right.
No more capitulation. No more division within our ranks. Right? Let's do what we got to do to hold the line or to minimize the damage that they can't help but doing because that's just what they are.
But
Right.
but my thing is, what is the argument right now, right? Because you're talking about a vulnerable population that can't vote, and you have another population that, like, for me, right, the most compelling argument doesn't seem to be compelling to most people, and that's we are witnessing a rise in white nationalism, and the way in which immigrants are being used, the way that the word is being used, the way that undocumented people is being used right now is a racist trope, right? Like they're eating cats and dogs won the election. They won the popular vote, right?
Right.
They made New Jersey like go from a blue state to a purple state,
Purple.
barely winning. And that's something at an emotional level that like frightens me, because like I just have an understanding that if they're building concentration camps, the concentration camps aren't just for the first victims, right? Like if we are literally sanctioning, like the person who was accused of being a fascist, the big idea of policy is to take people and put them into camps, put them into places where they will work and do things that we want them to do. Like that's the idea of the person who was accused of being a fascist who makes overtly white nationalist uh, praisings, right? Like, and it seems like the way in which we even understand this as a moral question has just been diluted, because we can't talk about white supremacy. We can't talk about the ways in which this is like you're poisoning the blood of Americans, right? And when you talk about it, you push it. But like, look, Latinos don't even want immigrants here, man. The Latino managers like, nah, we don't want that either, right? And not even understanding the way in which white supremacy works within our own communities, right? And so it's almost like an inability to talk about the devil in the room and the way the devil in the room works, and why that devil in the room can kill a lot more than their intended population, because they that poison spreads. It spreads distrust, it spreads fear, and their big jobs program is to get people to lock up their brothers, right? To get people to lock up other people. And that's the jobs program, right? Because I'm sure that if you incarcerate like millions of people, right, and private prison stocks go up,
The
and
same white folks who have no working class solidarity conscience are going to use those jobs to uphold their whiteness and their privilege.
right, those non-union jobs
Or the next
from
wave
the
of mass
private, right,
incarceration.
right. So, like, is there a way, right? Like, because if it's if the argument is couched on doing the moral thing for like, I just don't clearly, right? Clearly, our country is not in the mood to do the moral thing, right? Because I mean, I think that the election was pretty clear when it came to like the ways in which you engage white supremacy, the ways in which you engage democracy, the way when you engage humanity, right? And the ways in which we can scapegoat others and pick apart their hates. The things they hate were galvanizing, were motivating. You hate trans, you hate undocumented people, you hate, right? Like it was like a
Hate
thing
women.
of hate.
Mhm.
How in this environment can you break that mist without being accused of race baiting, or like, oh, you're talking about white supremacy? Like, how do you do it without talking about white supremacy? How do you do it with talking about white supremacy? Is that an issue? Is this just me? Like, how do you make that connection to do the moral thing in a profoundly immoral environment?
I think, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, is it that the uh, xenophobic, uh, transphobic narrative has just popularized over the last so often? Or is the narrative also that working people didn't have a home and so they stayed back, right? What we saw was the Democratic Party abandoned its base and has for many, many years. And
last week was a symptom of that. And I think what we saw was that people weren't being spoken to about bread and butter issues, right? The Trump administration was talking about eggs being cheaper and gas being cheaper, right? Like really connecting with folks. And we even saw that in our own state, right? Passaic City has the largest concentration of Pueblan Mexicans outside of the state of Puebla. Incredibly dense immigrant community. That city went blue by only 600 votes. Passaic County, which includes Patterson, one of the largest Muslim communities in the entire country, flipped entirely, went red. And so what we saw happen at a national level happened here, right here in our home. And what we saw were those baby margins all across the country, where when we weren't talking to people about the bread and butter issues, somebody else stepped in, started talking lies, and they took our margins and we lost.
But here's the thing, and here's my only pushback on that. Black people suffer more from poverty, et cetera, than like most other groups. And we were like, that's fascism, that's racism, right? Like, is it possible? Like, when I'm talking about people dealing with their hate, if we think it's the bread and butter issues, are we doing ourselves a disservice by thinking it's class when it's not? And that's my thing. Right? Like my pushback is I actually do not think it's class. I do not think it's bread and butter issues, because I think that there are groups of people who experience poverty who understand hatred and move away from it. There are those who move toward it. I think we give too much grace to people who saw something so clear. Like this wasn't just a Republican candidate, right? This wasn't just the old GOP. Like overt, like, and you couldn't avoid it. It's not like you got a different version. There's no sunny version of Trump, right? Like there's no optimistic I'm for you, right? Like is the jobs program was like immigrants are taking your jobs, therefore eggs are more expensive. It wasn't like eggs are more expensive. It was like immigrants are the cause of it, right? Like you have the ways in which the focus wasn't on an economic, like they're like, oh, there was no bread and butter program. He didn't offer bread and butter program. Like y'all with a bread and butter program.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, because when they polled voters, many voters said that one of the biggest reasons they voted for Donald Trump was because he was the one who signed the stimulus checks, which isn't true, right? He didn't issue the stimulus checks. When the checks went out, everybody got a letter that said signed by Donald Trump. I remember getting the letters myself, right? And so people think that Donald Trump championed that. The other interesting thing was in New Jersey and across the country, in cities that had experienced extreme rent increases, you saw those cities turn out more for Donald Trump. You're talking about Elizabeth, Passaic, Oakland, right? Where people were like, I am feeling the overwhelm of inflation. I am blaming it on the Biden administration. When it was really all the Trump tax cuts that drove us into that well. But like when people are living paycheck to paycheck, you can't think about the long arc, right? Like, Donald Trump is talking about the Social Security checks are going to be worth more because he's going to take the tax out of it, which is great, right? People who are senior citizens right now are going to see a bigger check, but then the rest of us aren't going to have Social Security, right? But if you are a person that's living on next month, who cares about the long arc of justice?
So you think that a significant number of people who voted for Donald Trump voted for him because they thought that his specific program, like in spite of all the stuff they knew, they thought that his specific program would be better for them economically, even though, like, as we talked about earlier, like the Biden administration was funneling billions of dollars into Black and brown communities, right? Like the actual money was going in ways that hadn't been seen before, right? But you're saying that it had nothing to do with the racism or the ways in which anti-Blackness works or the ways in which the messaging, because the messaging was so there. And so how do you go from the messaging being, his messaging on race was was tied to his messaging on economics so tightly, right? That it was y'all fault. So how do you extricate that? And it's like, no, it was just really, because I know what people say. They say, hey, it was the economy. Because who wants to say I'm a white supremacist? Who wants to say that, white nationalism is appealing, right? Like, no one wants to say that, but they all support putting folks in concentration camps, and they don't get no check for that, right? Unless it's the one they get from working the concentration camp, right?
Or that their things are going to be cheaper because people are going to work in concentration camps.
Right. So they have slave labor, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
so instead of cheap labor, you got slave labor, and that's not tied to the white supremacy.
I absolutely believe it's all connected, right? Like the capitalism is based on this idea that we have to believe that people are less than in order for us to justify the abuse that we commit upon them. I think I'm theorizing with you, right? So I haven't combed through all the articles either. But one thing that I also thought was powerful is hours after Trump gave his victory speech, the stock market went up 4 points. I don't know what that means to go up 4 points, but I know it's a lot. And that's how much people trust in this America because he's the president, right? But again, this is a picture based on lies and hate, just like you're talking about. So I think it's so important that we're building a multiracial democracy. And we saw that this Saturday, just like Brother Zaid was saying, because the second we started organizing people and more than 500 people turned out, you saw Attorney General Matt Plankin say that he doesn't like suing the federal government, but he'll do it. You saw Congressman Rob Menendez Jr. say verbatim, a quote, over his dead body would they separate families in his state. And you saw
Rob Menendez said that?
Rob Menendez Jr. said that. And so I think it's those are powerful messages. And when we create the conditions and we set the stage of what is normal and what is culture, people feel like they have to show up and they have to respond, right? And so it is so unfortunate and unkind that in a moment where people of color are the most under attack, just hours after what happened, we had people calling our centers, showing up at the blowing up the hotline saying what does this mean for my immigration case? What happens now? Are they going to start mass deporting next week? Should I start doing powers of attorneys? And in the midst of all that, we were like, we gotta turn out 500 people. We have to be the first person who makes the agenda wins.
Right. And sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to, and just adding to it, right? In terms of the stock market going up, when I see the stock market going up, I think that that's not based on irrational behavior. I think that's based on really rational behavior because of the types of industries. He's going to give a tax cut, so they're going to benefit from a tax cut, right? That's the one policy he said he would do, and so that's why it goes up. I just randomly I was avoiding news, and then I was like, he only had a job, he didn't. I'm just saying he didn't even have a jobs program, and then he just said immigration, and then I was like, ooh. So I googled private prisons. And they were private prisons shot up, right? And I was like, ooh. So when you're telling me the way in which capitalism works, I think that that's consistent with the story in that there are a lot of people who will see oppression and death as profitable, and a lot of very highly trillion-dollar profitable, which is the jobs program that he's about to propose.
And then and Dante, I want you to come back to where you were going.
Right. Thanks.
Just where we need to go with this.
Right. And this is something that's a very hyper localized fight right now. It's in Newark, East Newark, in the industrial area, in Chemical Corridor, right there on Doramus Ave. So, we've seen. Back in 2021, when we knew that ICE wanted to expand detention, immigrant detention here in New Jersey, we thought it was vital to pass to get the legislature to pass AB 5207, which I want to just quote, Judge Kirsch, the judge in district court that ruled in favor of the private prisons. He said that AB 5207 was a dagger aimed at the heart of the federal government's immigration enforcement mission and operation. And then truly it was. AB 5207 would ban any new contracts, any new extensions, any renewals between private prison companies like CoreCivic, Geo Group, and ICE. And when that law passed, of course, these private prison companies were really upset about that, because this was going to cut their margins considerably, right? You can't you can't operate a detention center in New Jersey anymore after this law was signed in August 2021. Elizabeth Detention Center, owned by CoreCivic, filed the lawsuit in district court. Judge Kirsch is the one who listened in on who sat for that case, and unfortunately ruled in their favor, saying that the AB 5207 was unconstitutional.
Wow.
I can get into why those reasons later, but he ruled it unconstitutional, and Jersey appealed it. It's currently in the Third Circuit, and oral arguments, I think, are scheduled for some time next month in December. So that's going to be really important for advocates and community members to show out and pack the court for that. But because now because private detention centers had a favorable ruling in district court, Geo Group, a major private prison company, they operate in the world. They have prisons in South Africa, Australia, the UK, and the US. And they were emboldened to file a copy-paste argument in the same district court with the same judge. And to no surprise, the judge ruled also in their favor, deeming AB 5207 unconstitutional, and they allowed them to continue to plan their operations while the AB 5207 is still being considered in the Third Circuit. So while that's pending, the judge said, Geo Group, you're allowed to continue to plan your operation to reopen Delaney Hall. Delaney Hall did previously operate as an immigrant detention center through 2011-2017. It has then operated as a halfway house and closed recently. But Geo Group, the company that owns this facility, wants to reopen it for immigration detention. And they said that this is critical for them because it's close to two international airports, JFK, Newark Liberty, and the contract is valued at over $100 million. I mean, this is unprecedented in our state's history. I think the most profitable detention center we've seen is 20, 30 million, but here is a contract valued at $100 million with capacity for 1,200 beds. They said they want to fill it minimum. They want to fill minimum 600 beds, but they have capacity for 1,200. And where there's beds, ICE will fill them. And this is currently where we find ourselves now, is working with city officials, working with the mayor, working with other advocacy groups to delay this from happening and stop Geo Group from reopening the Center for Immigration Detention.
Because it seems so very dangerous when you have a profit motive behind putting people in prison. And we've already seen levels of corruption, right? Like literally
Exactly.
You have a profit motive of like imprisonment. And it seems like those things are just so inherently dangerous to a democracy that, you know, the unrightful detention, the level for corruption is so much higher than when you have to pay like union wages for, and that you have to have like state regulations on prisons, which you should have because they are so inherently terrible things. I will let you continue. Please continue.
Well, no, Nadia, feel free to jump in. But you know what we're doing is, you know, we worked really hard to pass AB 5207. I mean, I think there's only other 2 states in the country that passed something like this. So this was a huge win for us when we passed, when Governor Murphy signed it. And tying this to the ITA, it's even more important now to pass the ITA, given all that's happening with private detention. We need to protect our immigrant families.
ITA,
We need to protect
trespass. I want everybody to follow you. Keep going.
Right. So we want to protect immigrant communities by ensuring that we're not using our public resources to have ICE come and arrest and detain and deport our immigrant communities. I mean, Delaney Hall is stone's throw away from an immigrant community in the Ironbound. So this is really, really alarming, especially knowing that Trump wants to do these mass raids and deportations day one. So ITA is even more important now.
And as a teacher, like I have students who've come to me the day after the election asking if, they would be turned in by the school, right? And which is the exact same thing that happened in 2016.
Or their parents getting snatched, coming to get them.
Right.
And we saw that, right? I remember I live in Elizabeth, and there was a father. It was a Bangladeshi family, and there was a father who had been picked up by ICE and deported overnight. They could not find him. We fought really hard with his wife to bring him back. And she also had an immigration case and was up for deportation. And we couldn't beat it. And she made the very painful decision to take herself and her 2 children, who were in high school and had never been to Bangladesh, to be with their father. We also had, I'm sure folks remember, there was racial profiling writ large, and there was a gentleman who was confused for an undocumented person. He made it very clear to them that there was a miscommunication. He was taken to the detention center in Hudson County. He told them he needed his insulin, and again, that there was a confusion, and they didn't provide it, and he got very, very sick. And so these detention centers and these private detention centers become very emboldened when they exist under a Trump administration. First of all, we should not, the existence of private prisons and prisons writ large should not exist, but private prisons that operate independently have no interest in a person's humanity. They are there to exploit. And, we often think that it is only, traditional prisons that are like having folks work and make materials, but they're also working in the detention center. And they're making materials in the detention center. And so it's just, it is so important to remember that they will fill the beds. And I remember during the first Trump administration, we were outside the Elizabeth Detention Center. We had more than 1,000 people present. We had the members of Congress who were there because people had been organizing for months at this point, saying, go into the detention center and see for it yourself. See that private detention must end, and we must end the contract in the Elizabeth Detention Center. You must go. And so we were able to rally members of Congress to go. And when I remember, the guards wouldn't let them in. They were like, sure, you're a Congress member, but you have no business here. This is private property. And I couldn't believe it. And these are, elected officials that would not be let in the prison. And I think the other piece about, the young students that you mentioned, I think very often and I can't remember if I got cut off before this, but we think about undocumented families and we think about them as a monolith, but very often the situation is the grandparents have no relief. They have children who have temporary status, and then they have children who are U.S. citizens. And so we're not talking about separation at the border. We're talking about separation of families.
No,
right?
that's right. And there is. Nate, what can you tell us about what's going to happen on December 3rd and December 5th?
Yeah, of course. Right, and December 9th. So what we have going on right now is we're mobilizing as a community and as advocacy organizations dedicated to advancing the rights and opportunities of immigrant communities here in New Jersey. In response to all that's happened in the coming weeks, what we want to do is rally anyone who's interested in fighting for immigrant rights to a mass mobilization call, a mass call on December 3rd that NGIJ is hosting. Please share the link widely. You can access it on our website and I think on our social. But this is a call where we're bringing anyone who's interested in learning more about the ITA and learning more about private detention, specifically this fight against Geo Group at Delaney. On the 5th, December 5th, we're planning to do a phone zap, a phone bank We talked about the importance of having legislators talk about ITA and not merely talk about it, but co-sponsor it and make sure it gets across the finish line. So what we need to do is rally up community members to call legislators' offices and let them know that we want and need them to co-sponsor and support the ITA. I'm blanking on what's happening on the 9th, but if you give me a moment, I can pull that up. But there's a number of efforts that
Trenton takeover.
Trenton takeover. Thank you. We have so many things going on. Thank you. We have Trenton takeover. So folks going down to the Capitol and lobbying legislators to again support and pass ITA.
Talk a minute about something that is becoming a part of the language in this landscape. Some of us get it, some of us don't. What is this thing called doxing? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Nedia, feel free to jump in if you'd like. But doxing is this practice of exposing someone, right? Exposing very private information about, I think generally, or I think the cases we've seen this play out is, for political opponents. It's just creating a sense of fear for speaking out, for dissenting on certain things. So we've seen it happen a few times, and I think when advocates speak out against Trump's anti-immigrant policies, I think we haven't shied away from speaking up against that. And a part of that comes with, fearing the threat of, retaliation or doxing from folks who don't agree or are upset about your dissent.
And I think, legislatively, I think, we're all sort of saying, Donald Trump will not be the president until January. But just 2 days ago, at the federal level, they attempted to pass a bill that would threat to endanger C3 organizations that are attempting to do the work that we do. And so it is not light to say, like, they are coming after the systems that we have created in our communities in order to keep each other safe. It was supported by Congressman Josh Gottheimer.
Right.
No surprise there. A person that continuously sided himself with Trump and his right-wing agenda. We shouldn't consider what party affiliation he has. He has consistently aligned himself with the Trump administration. And by doing this, knowing the harm that he could cause in his own state is unconscionable.
Because and why is that important with him? Because we need to tie some other things together too, right? Because the mass international Palestinian solidarity movement has gotten folks shook up, as it should. And they are likely to be, because they're using the terrorist language. Right? They're likely to be the primary target for that. And they've done, there's some precedents, right? Cuba solidarity work. My friends in Commerce and IFCO Pastors for Peace, Treasury shut them down from some of the work that they do on their day-to-day stuff several years ago on the same premise, putting Cuba on the terrorist watch list, right? So this is an empire acting empire-ish in a very desperate and ugly way. But they, what they do here, they will do there. What they do at home, they will do abroad. And of course, the devastation, the Gaza genocide, right? Gottheimer is an unapologetic Zionist, right? And so there's a bunch of folks that are very comfortable with the manifest destiny drive of Israel that's happening right now. That's what Gaza and the West Bank is. We need to be real clear about that, right? They're not interested in no two-state solution. They want it all. Where Palestinians can go wherever the hell they go, those that survive. But that's We need to tie those things together. And Andy Richards just dropped in the chat. Good to see you, Andy, that he's running for governor, and they want him to knock off any potential progressive voice to come for governor. And then if they can't get somebody right enough and white enough in this next election, here he come, willing to put himself forward, right, to try and knock off a progressive voice coming from our ranks. And y'all have no, clearly who I would support in that whole question. So I just want to bring that together.
Absolutely. And I think the act that Josh Gottheimer took by support,
Zaid, you're going out. I think that your mic froze. I'm going to take you out and put you back in. All right. So, but yes. So what are the things that are going on right now? What's coming up? And as we wind down, like, what are the next things to be considered?
Yeah, so I think maybe before Dante, you share, I think it's important to just repeat the work on the Immigrant Trust Act. I do want to share some other work that we are lifting up, that the state legislature can take right now. At a federal level, Biden can make one last push and expand relief to immigrants. He can assign TPS designations to more countries. Here in the state, outside of the Immigrant Trust Act, and I know, Dante, you're going to give us sort of the meat of that all over again, is we can codify the new Office of New Americans. It is an office that provides support to recently arrived immigrants, to immigrants in the state of New Jersey, has welcome centers, has navigators that does outreach in immigrant communities. It exists, and it was founded under the Governor Murphy administration, but same as Immigrant Trust Act, it can be taken away by the next governor. And so it is important that we're codifying the Office of New Americans. We also can expand state level protections, right? It was under a Trump administration that we raised the minimum wage in the state of New Jersey, that we expanded access to driver's licenses, that we allowed dreamers to be able to go to college in this state. We can do that same work and be a leader in what it means to be a pro-immigrant, pro-worker, pro-background state. We can expand access to unemployment and job searches to everyone, not just undocumented people, but anybody who's left out of the unemployment system. Gig workers, who we know will be under threat because Trump will do the work of misclassifying workers so they cannot join unions and so they cannot access our unemployment system. And we can expand access to healthcare to non-citizens. 2 years ago, we were able to win Cover All Kids, which allows children under the age of 19 who are undocumented to apply for healthcare in this state. There was an expectation that about 20,000 people would apply. More than 65,000 people have already applied for it in the state of New Jersey. It is incredibly important that young people have, and all of our people have, access to dentists and specialists and regular care, not only so that we all stay safe, but so that we are, mindful of how it is that we're handling emergency situations and what is considered an emergency. We can also establish a right to counsel program to ensure that all immigrants who are facing detention and deportation have access to an attorney. Especially if we're going to see mass deportations, we need to be able to throw sand into the gears of the machine.
That's right.
We can also provide protection and expanded access for reproductive freedom to undocumented people. And we can ensure that the Attorney General is issuing guidance to prosecutors to evaluate immigration implications for immigrants who are facing criminal charges. We are unsure of, in this mass deportation plan, logistically, how will Trump do his work? Will he use some sort of list? Will he just racially profile and set up checkpoints? Regardless, we must think now very creatively about how that work might be done and how are we messing up the gears of that work. The other two things I want to say that I feel like are so important is that we have opportunity to do something. I remember during the first Trump administration, there were Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, folks that were investing in private prisons. We called it the Backers of Hate campaign, and we were able to get Bank of America and Wells Fargo to divest from private prisons nationally. I remember that Maria Morris lives in Westfield, and she at the time was the board member of Wells Fargo, and we did actions in front of her home talking about the separation of families. And so again, it is really the onus of us to continue to organize, to set the conditions on which others must respond, right? We saw what Josh Gottheimer did 2 days ago when he supported an attempt to cut at the legs community organizations that are trying to protect our communities. We cannot make the assumption that when Trump and a right-wing agenda takes office, that the other party will go further left. We can't. We can never assume that people are our people.
Josh Gottheimer is the Joe Manchin of New Jersey.
Right, and I know that we are toward the end of this. Does it leave us with the message about what needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, right now the ITA is a bill that would directly protect immigrant families and communities in New Jersey. So, an actionable step, if you want to join in on that fight, is to call your local representative and ask them to co-sponsor the ITA. Don't get tired of doing that, because they really need to hear the importance of this bill. And for the other 3 actions, upcoming events, mass call December 3rd. There's a phone bank December 5th, and the Trenton takeover on the 9th, all working, all in purpose of continuing this campaign on the ITA.
And the final question that we always ask everyone, in all of the heavy work that you do, there's always like art, music. Who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I really love listening to John Coltrane.
Yeah.
Love it. Fills my soul.
Fair enough.
Okay, I have 2 songs rather than a particular artist. I'm sure everybody remembers Blackstreet Boys. I don't want to be a player no more. When I was a kid, I had no clue what that meant, and I used to go around saying that, and my mom used to be like, "You don't know what that means," and I'd be like, "I don't want to be a player no more." And my other favorite song, which feels hard to believe, is "Many Men" by 50 Cent. I love the intro and I love the rest of the song, and I know all the lyrics, and that song is my heart.
Okay.
Now, well, wait a minute. Hold up. Now, see, now this is a hip hop talk show, right? But I'm the jazz head in the mix. Dante, you're a young man, right?
I am, but I'm an old soul. I'm an old soul. Right? You can already tell by my choice.
Do you have any Coltrane favorites?
This is what I do. I put a John Coltrane playlist on Spotify, and I just let it do its thing. I can't tell you anything else, but I love it.
I don't know if you ever heard of a jazz drummer named Roy Haynes. Roy played with Train at very important intervals in Train's progression, and he drummed right into his 90s. He passed away last week at 99. He was one of John Coltrane's men, but just had to lift that, right? Because I belong to the generation that not only created hip hop, but it took jazz to the 21st century.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Man. See you in the streets.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Rashid Muhammad Patak and Yele is in the building.
Hotep.
What's going on, black man?
Hotep.
What's it, Pooh?
I was tuned in. I was tuned into the conversation. I was like, wow. What'd you say, Bob Zeiss? See you in the street. Yeah, it's gonna require a lot of street organization, brother, because we up against some real ops right now, as my students would say. They say, the ops out to get me, but we got some real serious ops in the White House and other places that's trying to put things in place, man, to oppress and continue the oppression and marginalization of black people, man, and brown people. This shit is, I'm a curse lord. This shit is real. This shit is real, man. This is real. It's real. And white nationalists, they are in place on the highest levels and even the local levels, local too, because all politics local, even local levels, man. to work to, to protect white power. For real. It's real. This is really happening. I was telling Ed earlier. I said this shit that happened last week, it's almost like something out of a movie, but it's real. You know what I'm saying?
Right in our damn
really
faces.
did happen. Huh?
Right in our damn faces.
Right in our faces, dude. So with that being said, hey, tomorrow we're gonna celebrate our big brother, Pastor in the Hood, Pastor Brian Ali. He was a founding member of the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition. Real strong brother, good dude. And a pastor that truly reflected. And I used to say this to him all the time. I said, brother, you're one of the few pastors I know that truly reflected the teachings of Jesus, of Christ. So I mean, it's
our pastor in the hood.
For real, man, for real. Miss him dearly. We continue to pour libation for the brother, Ibaye, Ashe, Ashe to our ancestor now, our brother Pastor Ali. But I'm glad that he's being honored with a street, with his name on the corner of Aldine and Lyons Avenue, because his church was there.
That's where he did the work. Yeah,
and he did a lot of pastor work, church work in the community, but he did community work. And that church served as one of the meeting places for the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition. So, it's only right that they name a street after him. Honored, honored our brother with his name on the corner of Aldine and Lyons Avenue in the Weekway section. That's what's up, man. That's what's up. So tomorrow we all gonna be there. 12 o'clock? I believe, was it 12 o'clock? We're gonna be there, to honor Pastor Brian Ali, Pastor in the Hood, co-founding member of the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition. I'm sorry, the mighty Newark Anti-Violence Coalition. No doubt.
All right, Ed? Well, no, I mean, I think that, I would just echo everything that Bashir just said. I mean, obviously, Pastor Ali was a member of the All Politics of Local Family as it relates to disciples.
That's right.
He was with us for 14 years, right up until the time he went home to the Lord. So we want to thank our brother for riding with us all that time, and his important contribution, not only to the disciples, but the contribution he made to the community every time he came on with his wisdom. So we want to make sure that we sound the trumpet, loud and hard right now, and tell folks that tomorrow there's going to be a proper naming of a street for a brother who put in work in them streets.
Yes.
And every time folks go down lines in Aldine, they ought to know that Pastor Brian Ali, as the brothers say, he was a real one, right?
Yes.
And he kept it real. He put that work in, and so we want to be there tomorrow at 12 o'clock with his family to let them know that we are going to remain in community with them, and that Pastor Ali did not leave them by themselves.
That's right.
That we're going to ride with them until the wheels come off.
Yes.
So we'll be there tomorrow, 12 o'clock, on Lyons and Aldine. To be a street naming for lovingly called Pastor in the Hood.
Yeah,
that's right, Ali.
That's
right.
No doubt.
No matter where that brother went, no matter what stage he was on, he wore that hood properly, and he wore it proudly.
No doubt, no doubt. And he always used to say, faith without works is dead, man. And that's why, you saw that brother in the community. You saw him reflecting, his belief in Jesus being in the streets. Literally, because we read in the Bible that Jesus went to the rejected ones, right? He went to the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, and that's what Pastor Ali was doing, man. He was doing that work, man. It didn't conflict with his faith, because
Yep.
all of it was all of it was connected. All that work was connected, and he just a powerful figure in the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, powerful figure, of course, on the radio show and in the clergy and the Christian community, but he was a powerful figure in the Newark Anti-Violence. Yes.
How many clergy in that span of 155 straight weeks?
That's right.
How many clergy actually got out there with us? We can count on half of my hand.
That's right.
The one who was the bedrock of the 2 or 3 that was Pastor Brian Ali. One of the things we used to laugh about with me, because he started doing work around the violence around the same time we did, right? This is before Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, and we missing each other in the street,
right?
And then when once we started rolling, on the shutdowns, bam, it all came together.
That's right. The stars aligned,
and it changed the face of so much of what's going on in this town. And let's, we have been. This is a conversation and a memorialization happening in a post-election Trump context and conversation, right? We are in the White House right now on the strength of that work. But as this White House changes, resources that we have gotten to do some work where we are saving our community's lives, we're gonna face some fresh shortfalls.
Absolutely.
So there's going to be a new challenge. Those of us doing that work, right? There's going to be some new pressures, new adjustments we're going to have to make, and it may require us, of course, reverting to our original ways of doing the thing when we didn't have no money in the first place.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So, this long live the spirit of Pastor Brian Ali. And then finally, must be said, this is the handmaiden of the self-determination teaching rooted in cultural revolution of the Imamo. It was the Imamo or Miri who taught us, you want to control your community, you show your community who you
Oh, Baba Zai's lagging. Trump sending signals to interrupt your speech, Baba Zaid. I think we lost Baba Zaid. I think we lost him, man. It's definitely gonna require some reorganization, brother. We gotta, we gotta do some soul searching, some reorganizing. Black people gotta know that, that we have to unify, man. We have to unify with each other first, man. For real. I mean that. I'm not gonna make any apologies about that. We have to know, as Dr. Clark would say, Pan-Africanism or parish. We have no friends. Pan-Africanism or parish. I'm telling you, we have to unify, man. We have to unify. Uniform and of course, as Amiri Baraka would say, uniformity without unity without uniformity. We gotta understand that. Once we get our shit together, man, maybe we can begin to kind of branch out. But right now, man, we have to unify, brother. I mean, the data is all there, man. It's all there, brother. Some people right now just like, wow, like, damn, I thought other folk were gonna be down with us like that. And now they getting reality checks, man. I tell Ed that all the time. Yo, this election, man, just gave us a reality check on a lot of shit, bro. A lot of things, bro.
So, John, let's truly thank everybody before we close down.
All right. So, I definitely want to thank everybody who's on the show today. We had a lot of guests coming on talking about what's been going on and the ramifications of the election. So, big shout outs to Maria Lopez of the Ironbound Community Corporation, Kim Gaddy and Henry Rose, environmental justice advocates Nedia Morsey and Serges Demefack.
No, Serges didn't make it. That was Dante. Dante, that's the guy.
Okay. All right. And so thank both of them for coming out and talking to us about the ways in which the immigration is going to play out, and what private prisons are the way private prisons are going to play out. And thanks again for our brother Bashir Akinyele for coming on with us today. So we are peace out. We will be back with you next week, and we will. Ed, do you want to have anything else to say?
No, I mean, except that what Zaid, do you have any final words? Anything you need to say?
I mean, I'm going to miss y'all tomorrow because I got committed to something else before I got the date for the street renaming. But I'm definitely going to be there in spirit. Yeah, that was my brother. We rode together. He was hugely. We were just huge. This is deeply personal to us. This is deeply personal to us. It's not just the group, the No Contact Violence Coalition. It's how he connected with all of us. So I just wanted. I'll just leave that there.
You got any other final things you want to say, Bashir, before we close?
Oh no, man! Big shout out to All Powers Local Radio Show for inviting me on to honor our big brother, Pastor Brian Ali, aka Pastor in the Hood.
All right, well, there you go, man. As my brother Zaid would say, we'll catch him where, Zaid?
The whirlwind.
Catch you in the whirlwind.
All right, we'll tap peace.
Until next week.
Until next.